Second. Thank you all for waiting, for bearing with us this evening.
Can't hear you.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Mrs. Hartman.
Ms. Cruz?
Present.
Ms. Fox? Ms. Hume?
Present.
Mr. Malloy?
Present.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Mrs. Welby?
Present.
Mrs. Yanni?
Present.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Present.
9 present.
I also want to take a moment of silence for a student we lost last month, 6th grade student Jamonte Bradford. He attended Northeast Intermediate and transferred to West in January. So please keep Jamonte and his family in your thoughts this evening. Communications to the board.
Yes, executive sessions were held on February 5th, 2020, February 24th, and this evening to discuss personnel, staffing, negotiations, real estate, and litigation.
Thank you. Mr. Audi?
Good evening, all. My comment is, wow, that's really on. Okay, I don't have to put it close. My comment is that with regard to asbestos and lead discussions tonight, we're here to discuss the abatements that have gone on and the proposals for moving forward. And I think that's all perfectly appropriate and what we should be discussing this evening. But as many of you know, and as the board certainly knows, there is a federal lawsuit that's been filed. And because of that, I would be strongly advising the board not to discuss matters in the past, but rather focus on the purposes of what we're going to be discussing tonight, which is the abatement and the fixes for the buildings with regards to asbestos and lead and how we move forward and the time frames for that. So I would make that caution to our board and just ask the audience to note that that would be the reason. If we can't answer a question, that would be why. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. McTiernan?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I have some great news and some announcements that I would like to make. Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science held its Region 2 competition at Wilkes University over the weekend. South Intermediate and Scranton High School participated. 13 of our students earned first place awards, 3 students earned second place awards, and 4 students earned perfect awards. 93% of our students at South will move on to the state competition for having the highest number of advancing students than any other school, which is awesome. I would also like to congratulate the Scranton High Night Rhythms. If you've never heard them, you should, because they are awesome also. They competed in Virginia last weekend in the Mid-Atlantic Show Choir Spectacular. The Glitter and Gold Choir placed 3rd overall in their division. The First Edition Mixed Show Choir placed 2nd overall in their division. And Madeline Casey, who I had the privilege of having while I was the principal at South Intermediate, earned Best Performance overall in the whole competition. This weekend, they competed again in the Keystone Chapter Unico National High School Choral Competition at Lackawanna College. They finished in first place for the large choir division and also won the People's Choice Award. So congratulations to them. Again, I would like to congratulate the following teams and individuals for their performance in the districts. West Scranton Lady Invaders, girls basketball, district champs. Victoria Watkins, a diver from West Scranton High School, district champ. Nick Draus, Scranton High School swimmer, district champ. Good luck to all of them as they compete in the states. Scranton School District received a PCCD 2020 School Safety and Security Grant. I would like to give a special thanks to Molly Abdallah and Maggie Cosgrove, current SSD staff, and also a special recognition to Sergeant Thomas Carroll from the Scranton Police Department. The Scranton School District received $368,507, and the major focus of the grant will be to update our current safety and security equipment throughout the district. So thank you to those individuals. And lastly, this is an announcement about the Census 2020. Participating in the census is required by law, even if you recently completed another survey from the Census Bureau. A complete and accurate count is critical for our community because the results of the 2020 census will affect community and school funding, congressional representation, and more. Invitations to respond to the 2020 census will be delivered between March 12th and 20th. Once you receive that invitation, you can respond online, by phone, or by mail. So we appreciate everybody doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to hear good news. Thank you very much. The PSBA report, Director Hume.
Okay. I will summarise this, and I have passed out a larger copy to the board. During this month, we received crisis communications assistance from the PSBA, which gave us invaluable help with learning how to communicate as well as we can. There is a PR community relation to badge. I did not know we were Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. We can get badges, guys. And this is available online. I have commenced this. This is challenging, but we will do it. Upcoming events. The Advocacy Day is on March 23rd in Harrisburg. I will be going down in a lift, leaving very early. We will be talking to various legislators on things such as charter school reforms and other things. On the 24th of March at 6 o'clock at the Abington Heights School District, there is a sectional meeting which will bring together PSBA school board members from this region. It's at the admin building up Grove Street. There will be talking things for the Charter School Legislation Task Force, what school leaders need to know, communication planning for the unplanned. I will be attending, hopefully the PR committee will also be attending, and we will all be able to do that. Finally, the other event is the Focus Foundation, which is for school design and construction planning. That is in Harrisburg. It's overnight. It's the 31st of March, overnight into the 1st of April. $50 for school board members, and it's a two-day conference putting best practices for topics such as reuse or reconstruct, energy savings and healthy schools, financing and construction best practices, school safety and security. Tonight, PSBA has asked the board to move on a resolution in support of cyber charter school funding reform, which we have on our agenda to vote on. There was the editorial on the charter reform that was published in the Times Tribune on the 2nd of February, was circulated by PSBA statewide, and Sarah Hophius Hall's article on asbestos in schools of 2/16, the 16th of February, was highlighted in the PSBA bulletin of the 17th of February and went statewide. It was more a general thing, not only our situation here, but statewide issues with asbestos in schools. The proposed federal budget would shrink the Department of Education funding by nearly 8%, in part by consolidating 29 major programs, including Title I aid and funding for charter school expansion into a block grant, unlikely to get up though. The fair funding lawsuit update, as you know, Wilkesboro is one of the plaintiffs in that fair funding suit. It's been postponed till the fall. If they win, according to one of the attorneys, what's likely to happen is the judge will say, I agree with you, the system is underfunded, the system is broken, legislature, you fix it. What we will need at that point is for the legislature to feel a lot of pressure from public opinion, because otherwise, sadly, looking at past history, they may very well go, eh. What's next is the trial, which will be in front of a judge late fall or early winter, and then finally, the Governor has gone back to the PA State House and Senate for an additional $588 million supplemental appropriation to cover overspending, and one of the things we should ask him is, do we want to ask him for an emergency appropriation for the Scranton School District to be included in that bill to cover the unexpected costs of our remediation work? And that's the PSBA for this month.
Thank you. And we also have Sandra Miller here with us this evening to update us on our new numbers from PA Schools Work.
Thank you very much, Madam President, Superintendent, and esteemed board. Many of you are new, so I'll just give you a little brief update. PA Schools Work is a coalition of many organizations throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, from the Ed associations as well as our allies in different child advocacy groups. At your table, you will have our new folder. It has the updated information. Due to the increase of $160 million, Pennsylvania has gone from 46th in the country to 44th worst funding for commonwealths and for the states and how they participate in funding. In addition, you'll have just statistics on Scranton, so they're on the left side. I also provided some material for you for your advocacy work and a little bit of information about PA Schools Works. I know you have a lot of important things on your agenda tonight, so I won't take a very long time with it, but I just wanted to continue to encourage your community and yourselves to continue your advocacy work. You've been instrumental in moving the dialogue ahead. I've been talking to your representatives, and they're very proud of all the work that you have done and the community has done, and I'm here to support any of those efforts, so I'm willing to come back and talk to you about your numbers. You are in a situation where the governor's budget at $100 million and $25 million for special ed isn't going to be sufficient, so we really need to advocate for the $405 million. Whether or not the legislators are successful in doing the charter reform, we as a coalition are really standing behind the $405 million, and we are here to support you in those efforts. I will also be attending Advocacy Day, so if you want to reach out to me, I can speak to you then and on March. And then I'm also willing to come back to a finance meeting or any of your policy meetings and talk about how we can do things. We've had many opportunities in the past, Katie, to work together, and I'm here to support you as you need. Feel free to reach out to me. My card is in the folder. Many of you have not had a chance to speak to me in the past, and I am here to be a resource to you. Please go to the PA Schools Works website. In fact, Representative Flynn pulled me aside at a meeting recently and told me that PA Schools Work outside of PASBO has the best resources on school funding in the Commonwealth and the best advocacy material on how to ask for more dollars for all of our school districts. So please use those resources, use me as a resource, and give me an opportunity to work with you. And I appreciate your time, and good luck this evening. I hope your meeting goes well.
Thank you so much. Kucharty and Associates.
Good evening. My name is Rocco DiPietro with Kucharty and Associates, and this is Dr. Joseph Kucharty, our principal. We're going to put together a brief presentation to walk you through the current status of what's going on at the Northeast Scranton Intermediate School. We'll happily take questions, anything that you may have afterwards. Just a quick summary. Background, the events started at the end of January, as you are all well aware, with an emergency declared and the closing of about 4 schools. During the time of that initial assessment, the EPA was brought on site early February. Kucharty was engaged subsequent to that visit from the regulators. Students were relocated to 2 additional schools, at which point in time we started to complete recommendations provided by the US EPA, which included the bulk sampling of plasters in both wings, the old and new wing of the Northeast Intermediate School. We conducted additional environmental assessments upon request to ensure that the locations that the students were moved to were just as safe, if not safer, than where they were. And an abatement company has proceeded to complete emergency abatements to bring the school to a safe position. Current status of where we're at, and based on the questions and the original scope of work identified here, that includes what was originally about 19 emergency abatement areas, everything from a classroom with a damaged piece of pipe to thousands of square foot of flooring that may have been damaged. That work is progressing as it is scheduled and on track for completion from an abatement standpoint early next week. That remains on track. In addition to the emergency abatements, a question was raised as to the personal belongings of students, essentially stuff in their lockers, and was it safe for them to take? One of the ways we made that determination was through the use of dust wipes and dust sampling protocol that exists in other areas during other kinds of crisis, such as 9/11 or post-emergencies in the community. And I'll let Dr. Cacciardi speak to the results on the dust sampling as well. So, Joe?
So thanks, Rock. Last week, as we talked to the board, one of the things that I mentioned is that asbestos fibers are like little lightning bolts, like little needles. Here you see a picture of asbestos fibers under about a 10,000 times microscope, just to show you what some of the asbestos fibers look like. One of the tasks that you had given us last week was to determine, with the potential for asbestos circulating in the school, whether personal items that may have been in lockers and in locker rooms or in classrooms were actually safe because they were in and around dusty materials that may contain asbestos. We sampled multiple locations and we compared those results to what the EPA has used in other disaster situations or other workplace situations. And we found that all of those levels were below what EPA would consider acceptable for routine occupancy. Routine occupancy are areas where individuals will walk, individuals will lay on the floor, individuals will move and kick up dust and things like that. So at this point, we're comfortable identifying that, and we will send this report along, that the personal belongings and the materials that are in the Northeast Intermediate School have met those levels as published by the EPA. Sure. So another task that we were asked to perform was to look at the other schools in the district and ensure, number one, that there were no obvious environmental emergency or emergent concerns that were there, using our glasses, looking at them through our eyes as environmental professionals, and also number two, to ensure that the locations that individuals from the Northeast School were at least as safe as, or more safe than the Northeast School. We went to all of the locations between the end of the week last week and over the weekend and earlier today, and what we found is that that's actually the case. Those locations, the other Scranton schools, do not have the concerns that you'll hear about in a second relative to asbestos-containing materials or other environmental toxins that can be obviously identified. So we were comfortable with that recommendation. Rocco?
So, the other $1 million question was the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, otherwise known as the HVAC system, throughout the building. That's where the problems for us really begin, and where we'll spend the bulk of the time explaining what's going on. So there are 3 systems that operate within the building. There is one for the new section, one for the old section, and one that's dedicated to the auditorium, separate and distinct from the other 2. We looked at each in terms of where the emergent threat was, what was present, and how the system operated in consultation with your existing HVAC contractor, Scranton Electric, and an engineering group that we brought in, Greenman Peterson, GPI. Between the 3 of us, we've looked at all of the systems and have made some determinations as to the relative safety and fixes, corrective actions, if you will, that are going to be necessary in order to safely ensure that these systems can perform at the level that you need them to perform at. The first is the new system. In terms of complexity, this is the easiest of the three to fix. Essentially what happens is in a room slightly smaller than this one, the entire room is encased in steel with a large fan that draws outside air and pushes it through the entire school building. Over the years, we suspect that parts of that structure inside the room have been taken down, misplaced, rotted away, and deteriorated, such that the picture you see on the right, the large object, is the actual fan itself. It is meant to be encased in a metal room. Pieces of that are gone, and pipe insulation or thermal system insulation, asbestos, that Joe just talked about, is seen in a damaged condition above that plenum. The fix is relatively simple. We did receive some quotes to clean, abate the area, clean the room, abate what is damaged, and then replace the panels to its original design so that the intake air, the fresh air comes in, isn't drawn across asbestos-laden pipes, but rather from the outdoor. That's a relatively simple fix in terms of cost and in terms of timeline. I'll speak to that costs in a little bit, but this is a couple of weeks of work for the abatement contractor to do their piece, for Scranton Electric or whomever that you decide to do their piece to put the room back together, and then connect some ducts so that fresh air can make its way directly from the outside into the fan room and be distributed. That would provide supplemental heat in the coldest of days and fresh air ventilation in the warmest of days. That is distributed throughout the classrooms. The auditorium system is a little more complicated, but certainly not insurmountable. This is a separate structure, about 5,000 square feet, that sits between the old and the new wing. It's got its own fan and fresh air intake. It actually shares part of an intake with the new system. What essentially happens in this 5,000 square foot room, about 6 foot tall, the entire room is pressurized. What can be seen on the picture on the left is the duct that pushes air into this entire room, and then the hot air essentially rises, and underneath the seats there are metal bells, kind of an upside down saucer, that the hot air rises and warms the ceiling above, or the room above. So the entire room is part of the duct, if you will. The air comes in to the room and then filters out. Problem with the room is couple-fold. Number one, the picture on the left is an asbestos-lined intake duct that's in various states of disrepair. It has been previously repaired on a couple of occasions, but there certainly is parts of damage. There are asbestos pipes that run in and around this room in various states of damage. And the entire room has essentially been used as a storage area for what seems to be a significant amount of time. And again, this is the fresh air duct, so it wouldn't take much for a fire or mold or asbestos pipe for essentially to force that air up into the auditorium. The fix, a little more complicated, a little more time than what was done on the new side, probably in the neighborhood of a month. A couple of weeks of work, certainly, to pull all the material out, to remove all the asbestos, to clean it so that it is in intended position, which is a clean, fresh air duct plenum. An alternative to that could be to duct the air from the ventilation system right to each of those bells, so we could avoid the need to clean the room, and you can leave it as it is with the storage. They are assuming that would meet fire code, but you can duct the air directly so that fresh air doesn't have to go across all this asbestos pipe or asbestos material. Of course, the other alternative is you can restrict occupancy. Don't allow folks to use the auditorium, and then you can shut the system off without any terrible concern, if that's acceptable to the district. So you kind of have you got three options there at least. Herein lies the greatest challenge that you'll face, is the old side, if you will, the 1906 wing that has its own set of ducts, tunnels, passageways, chimneys that feed fresh air through the building. The pictures that you see here represent the bottom tunnels. These are essentially 3 4-foot tall by 3 4-foot wide brick alleyways that are lined with steam pipe with asbestos insulation. This is in the lowest levels of the building, adjacent to the fan room. There's a big wooden fan that pushes air through these tunnels and up chimneys and eventually into classrooms. For obvious reasons, years of certainly some damage and disrepair have caused significant damage to asbestos inside of the ducts. So, what can we do about that? We did receive a price and a quote to clean the entire duct, and again, there's about 9 vertical columns and an untold number of horizontal chambers that run like a honeycomb underneath the old side of the building. But all of the air that comes in from the outside is pushed through these tunnels and up into the building without any filtration at all. So the price to clean that has been included in your packets, as well as a lengthy shutdown of at least 3 months in order for somebody to get into those vertical spaces. All of them are confined spaces. All of them present significant hazards to the abatement contractor, but you can see what it looks like. Again, an alternative here is to shut down the system. This is not necessary for heating and certainly can be done without rather than abate that. There would be some secondary concerns. We would request and I think ask that you seal off those intakes, because we do know that there is some amount of asbestos fiber in the duct, and we can certainly see that it's damaged. But to continue to allow that to operate with fans blowing across this material and into your classroom, I certainly don't think meets your mission of 21st century education. Cost estimates, the 1931 system, and these are again very rough, very crude sets of data, in the $40,000 to $50,000 range. That includes the abatement, that includes the fixing of the steel structure, and it includes creation of this ductwork that would connect the outside to the inside duct. That actually is shared between systems. The auditorium system, anywhere from $45,000 to $65,000. Again, depending upon what route you take can take everything out, clean it, essentially abate all the asbestos and use that as the plenum, or you can duct the system right to each individual register within the floor and allow that system to operate. Yes, Director?
When I took a look at the bells in that room, would we be ducting each one of the current bells, or would we cut down the number of bells? Because there's about 140 bells in that room.
Yeah, we were told that they would duct directly in a channel, and then from that channel would feed. So there would be almost like a trough, if you will. That was what Scranton Electric had indicated. There wouldn't be a pipe directly. It would start out as a larger branch, but go.
Thank you.
And then the last system is the complicated, at least $150,000, and that doesn't include replacement of the fan, which we believe to be made out of wood. Seemed to be an odd and non-traditional approach, which certainly wouldn't meet any current building code now. So that's a significant cost. We're clearly aware of that. So before I kind of pass the baton or answer questions, or Dr. Cacciardi does, I'll at least talk through what our next steps are. We're proceeding along the lines of continuing the emergency abatement for all of the imminent hazards that have been identified, again, on track for about a week today, plus or minus a few days of clearance testing and air sampling. We did receive the dust wipe sampling back, so that at least opens up the personal belongings discussion. Clearly want to know where you guys stand on the HVAC systems, because if they're going down the shut it down route, there are some approvals from both the EPA and probably the Department of Education that we will have to receive prior to us doing that. And ongoing operation and maintenance work, which continues through the district. We're working on a regular basis with Paul Doherty and Carl Puglisi to make sure that as small things come up, they are addressed and abated on an ongoing basis so as not to end in this position again. And then I understand, not that I'm involved in it, but the district is pursuing summer abatement projects to clean up large swaths of asbestos, which is in decent shape at this point, but so as to avoid ongoing management, that is ongoing.
I believe it's worthwhile to go through some of the quick photos there.
Okay, sure. So just so you're aware, I'll kind of self-explain or explain these briefly as we go through. This is the 1906 system. Again, this is the dinosaur of the district. The building on the left is the vertical air intake. So you can imagine air comes from the top down across all that stuff and then enters the fan room, at which time it blows through, again, representative tunnels in the middle and to the picture to the right. Those brick-lined tunnels are where those multiple steam pipes are that run hundreds of feet horizontally and vertically. Again, just another example in one of the chambers of pipe insulation that's probably been there for 120 years. Picture here on the left, again, part of the air intake. There are designed metal louvers that there's a vertical chimney, if you will, big square box, which seems to have been put on at the time that the auditorium was built, because it was an exterior wall at that time, so the fresh air was designed to come in through the exterior wall. When the auditorium was built, it took away that wall, so it appears as though they built a vertical chamber. That vertical chamber is the brick structure you see on your left. However, the louvers do not open. They seem to be, just not operable at the moment, so the fresh air, again, comes from places like where that busted up plaster and asbestos pipes are. So the fresh air isn't really fresh air coming from that vertical chamber. Again, another picture of a tunnel on the 1906 system. Eventually, it ends up in places like this. Folks familiar with the wood shop will have seen these doors where they're essentially the steam pipes heat some pieces of cast iron, and that air, as it rises, continues to heat. There are multiple columns like that through the old side of the building. Again, just another example of the maze of tunnels. On the 1931 side, remember this is the new side, this is the fan room that we're trying to enclose. Again, another picture. At the bottom of that, you see a metal channel. That represents where the ceiling should be. And again, pipe that has been repaired, in this case with taping of the ends, is now exposed, so the fresh air kind of comes from above that over those pipes. Again, more examples. The picture at the bottom, you see the curve of the fan. Right above that is where the fresh air, I use that word in quotes, is coming from, but you can see how the panels are represented there. This is the auditorium, probably the most disturbing of the pictures, at least, but that is the fresh air intake aligned with asbestos. You can see pipes in the background and just years of storage, which for, again, a variety of reasons is not designed for storage. It's designed to be the fresh air plenum, not storage. There's numerous boxes, combustible items, flammable liquids, and damaged asbestos. But that's essentially the air is passed over that. It's not in the duct. It is around that folks go up into the auditorium. Floor is above you in this picture, and that's why the price is what it is, to remove all that material, clean it, and abate all that asbestos. Again, that's the duct. So, that's our presentation. I'm certainly entertained, as I'm sure Dr. Kachardi would. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Kachardi and Mr. DePietro for coming tonight and speaking with us. So the question that I have is, are there cons, and if so, what are they, of sealing off the 1906 system?
So just to repeat, what are the cons of shutting down the 1906 system. Sure. Other than the approvals, we certainly would need approvals, both from the EPA, as this is not a traditional response action for damaged or significantly damaged TSI, and the Department of Education, since we're changing the system from what it was to something else. We will lose the ability to bring fresh air into the classrooms. So in winter, it's probably not going to be a big deal. You will lose some supplemental heat, but traditionally, as I understand it, the old wing is very warm and uncontrollable, so it would get a little cooler. The problems will end up in the summer or in days when you can't open the windows. The way the building code natural ventilation system works is you have to have a minimum of 4% operable windows for every square foot of flooring, which you do meet. So natural ventilation appears to be an option. You would just lose the ability to control fresh air. So smells are going to permeate, things are going to be a little harder to control. Now that won't include bathrooms. They have their own exhaust ventilation. It won't include kitchens, but it will include the classroom areas at this point. I don't know, John?
Yeah, I think it's good to review all the potential concerns. First, there's no guarantee that we can acquire EPA approval to do this because it's a non-traditional activity, it's a non-traditional remedy. Second, you may want to consider the concern of having the children in a building that does not have an active ventilation system, which is very untypical for not just school buildings, but many buildings, for all buildings. So you may want to consider what it's like to have 600, 700, 800 people in an enclosed building for 6, 8, 10 hours at a time, basically breathing.
I have a question. For those approvals, do you know how long they might take to get answers for?
I would suggest that the building code answer might happen somewhat rapidly, and rapidly in terms of days to weeks. I can ask the question, but I don't have an idea about the EPA approvals because, again, this is something that just hasn't been asked before. It may be weeks, but I would suspect it's going to be in the 30-day time frame or so until they can respond, because they're going to have to research it and then they're going to have to issue an opinion at that point.
But, sorry, somebody wrote it? Okay. We do have the option, if I'm understanding it correctly, of splitting the two sections of the building. So we could potentially not have access to the 1906 section, but utilize the 1931 section if we were to go down the road of doing this work that you've proposed this evening.
So that's correct. We're speaking from an environmental safety and health standpoint. However, before you reoccupy the buildings, you certainly would need the fire code approval so that you have the amount of exits and exit width, the electrical approval based on the construction permits and those things as well too.
And just to comment, in terms of the ventilation systems, they are separate. So shutting down the 1906 or the old system would not affect the new system. They operate independently, with the exception of the new system shares a common intake with the auditorium. So in our estimate here, it essentially includes bringing that fresh air and splitting it equally between the auditorium and the new side of the building. If you decided we were going to abandon the auditorium, then we would just redirect that. So there essentially are three separate ventilation systems. What you do with one will not affect what you do with the other two.
So, as I understand it, we could abate the HVAC system to the 1931 building, and there would be no issue then. We would not need further codes and approvals to bring students back. We would only need further codes and approvals to take students back into the 1906 side. I'm assuming the auditorium stayed shut for the time being.
Yeah, no, you're correct.
And so you can in some way isolate the air going into the 1931 HVAC system from any contact with the system from the 1906 building.
Correct, yeah. They are separated.
And that's the first quote that you've given us there for the 40,000?
Correct.
Okay. And then if it was decided that we then wanted to proceed to do the auditorium, at a separate occasion, we could go ahead and do the auditorium?
Correct.
Okay. So we would then have the 1931 building with the functioning HVAC system. We would have the auditorium possibly either not in use or with a functioning HVAC system, depending on what is decided as a business decision. And the 1906 building would subject to approvals from everybody's aunt and their grandmother and every government body that anyone can think of with lots of initials. Once we got those approvals, we'd be able to put students back in the 1906 building. Have I understood that correctly?
Yes, with the caveat that after the approvals, that would include the shutting of the system down on the old side.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Operational HVAC on the new side, operational HVAC on the auditorium, and no HVAC, simply radiator heat on the old
1906
side.
building.
Correct.
So it can be done in the step sequence, should we so choose.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Hi, gentlemen. I understand that logistics aren't up to you, but is there any environmental safety issue with the children retrieving their belongings at this point? Dr. Cacciardi, if I'm not mistaken, you commented on that, but I wasn't clear exactly what you meant.
Correct. We found low levels, basically a fiber or two in some of the samples. All of those levels are below what EPA considers as clearance for any cleanup project that involves dust. So the simple answer is no, there's not a recognized environmental hazard in releasing those materials.
Thank you. All things being equal, let's presume for this question that we all agree on everything and money is no object. I recognize this is the hypothetical of all hypotheticals. But all things being equal, how soon can we get these children back in Northeast? Money's no object and everybody agrees up here. What's the soonest the kids can go back to Northeast?
You mean the entire building? All
No.
three? Or
No.
just kids back?
No, I understand it. It's just kids back.
I would think a couple weeks.
And are either of you aware of any air quality test results that demonstrated airborne asbestos in Northeast?
Demonstrated airborne asbestos?
Correct.
We have clear air samples. All of the air samples we have to date that either we've done or that we've seen have been clear. Below EPA clean criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So,
Just to clarify, you did not take those air samples prior to the decision to close the building, did you?
No, not Cacciardi?
Yeah.
No.
No. Okay, thank you.
so if we were to move forward with shutting down the system in the 1906 site and remediation of the 1931 piece, maybe minus the auditorium, do we have access to all the classrooms in this building? If we were just to remediate the 31 system.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So we have three separate systems, or two separate systems with the shared piece in the auditorium.
Mhm.
If we were to get the 1931 system, if we were to move ahead with that work and shut down the 1906 system, do we have access to that whole building?
To the new building?
Both sections of that building?
Well, you would have access clearly to both sections. That assumes that if you're going to occupy the old side without an operational mechanical ventilation, you have to have the approvals.
Okay. Yeah,
So
it is.
if you were to abate, in the sequence of things, if you were to abate the new side, spend a couple weeks, spend whatever it was, $40,000 or $50,000 to get the new side operational, then mothball the ventilation system on the old side, we would have started the approvals, hopefully in a month. You have the approval and then you can occupy both sides of the building. Half would have a mechanical ventilation system, the other half would not.
That would get us to the summer to move ahead with some of the bigger projects if we were to choose to do that.
Yeah, that's a good question, Director. It's a good point. Let me clarify something. All of the commentary we've received from the engineering groups that are seeking this approval or would be seeking this code approval, do so on the grounds that this is a temporary measure. I don't think anybody's comfortable that this would be a long-term solution to shut down the mechanical ventilation system. I think any approvals granted are going to be done on the auspices that this is an emergency, get you through to the end of the school year. I think if you were to present that to PDE, that this is our long-term 10-year plan to not run these systems, you might find a little more resistance.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm looking at is if we're getting in there, say, first week of April, we only have April and May, we have a weekend into June, so we're only looking at 2 months and a week. I mean, that 1906 system, we're saying it's going to take 3 months, so we're going to, if we're moving kids into this building, this system is going to be shut off, I'm going to presume, correct?
Correct.
But if we get the 31 side remediated, we can't have access to the 1906 side, but the system is going to be shut down without mechanical ventilation.
Correct.
Do we need remediation of the auditorium to do that?
No. No, the remediation of the auditorium would be contingent on you occupying the auditorium. If you choose not to occupy the auditorium and that isn't an assembly space, then I think you can hold on any abatement at that point.
Thank you.
At this time?
If it's clear that the students at Northeast will be able to have access to their lockers, can I ask Superintendent McTiernan, perhaps we can work forward with the logistics plan to see what we can do to get them in to get those? I think
I feel as though the decision we have to make here tonight is, are we comfortable making a decision to move forward with some part of these abatement projects that have been laid out, which then would be returning the students at least a part of the building within a few weeks, where I think that leaves us with the option of, do we want to wait until they are back and can access their own belongings, or my preference would be, let's move forward with getting the students their belongings as quickly as we possibly can.
I'm totally with you on that. I think they're two separate issues. I think that now that we know that we can organise a plan in safety to work out a way that we can, with minimal disruption to the works and to everything else, get the students back. I think you guys get medals for being so patient. The quicker we can get you back to your stuff, the better. I think that my feeling is they're two very separate issues, that there are study notes in those lockers that some of these people have really suffered from not having their workbooks and notes. I think the sooner we can reunite them with their possessions, the better.
Do we have consensus on that, to ask the administration to move forward on a plan to immediately get the belongings out of the lockers and to the students?
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. McTiernan, please. Thank you.
Yes, and just so I'm clear, this, as we move forward with the belongings, we're not bringing children in to get their belongings. We're packing up their belongings and bringing those belongings to the children, correct?
Yes.
There's current asbestos abatement occurring in those areas, so no, you don't want to bring the children back into the school until everything's been completely cleared. However, you do have clear material, so you can bring those out or to another location or in bags or whatever the best way to do it is.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's a logistical question.
Okay, thank you.
So before we move forward with that, what would the timeline be to allow the kids, maybe even if it's just one day to come into the school?
No, we're going to move in a direction, we're going to take the belongings to them.
So, and would we like to move on at this time and come back to the discussion of how we are going to progress later in the meeting? Yes. At this time, we will take public comment. We welcome public comment. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Union officials will be allowed 4 minutes. We are going to keep to that schedule this evening. So when the buzzer goes off, please finish up your thought and step away from the microphone. Our first speaker, Vivian Williams.
Good evening, everybody. I first want to say, I know you probably can't answer some of my questions, so as long as I can say them, that's fine. I first want to apologize that it took a crisis like this to educate myself, to become a more engaged citizen outside of my children's own school. Thank you, Director Schuster, for pushing me to become a more engaged and knowledgeable person. Director Yanni, thank you for coming to our PTA meeting and listening to all of our concerns and having us feel like our voices are being heard, even if it's just a little. Director Malloy, if I ever need an attorney representing me, you are the person I want, because you are not afraid to push for the answers we still all yet deserve. Director Gilmartin, your professionalism in leading the board through the current crisis speaks volumes of your integrity, so thank you. Truth be told, I have no political ambition, only the ambition of being the parent voice and perspective that you all seem to still need when you're making the decisions that affect 10,000 or so students and thousands of families. I feel even more that the board hasn't given much thought to this saying, imagine being in our shoes as parents of the district that send our children to school every day for 6 to 7 hours in your buildings. I believe only 3 of you have or have had children within our district. And I hope when and if you have children in the district that you look back and say, wow, I never truly gave the transparency and respect parents truly deserve. As the findings of the updates to our district from the Times, as opposed to the district as a parent, is simply hurtful. It makes me question the steadfast faith that I have had in the board, as I often talk to parents about being in your shoes, the ones that sit in front of me. I commend you for cutting ties with GUZAC, though in Willard's HERA report, it states that documentation prior to 2016 and remediation is limited to none when reporting the 2019 report. I'm curious to know what data then was used to create any reports prior to 2019, as GUZAC has worked in our district for 10 years or so. Since Mr. Doherty began to ask the hard questions and properly report what should have been done for years, which, by the way, you may think you're out of your league, but Mr. Doherty, if it wasn't for your diligence and rule following, I believe we wouldn't know the severity of what faces our district's infrastructure and would still be dealing with GUZAC. I stand in front of you with the same suggestion and question that I feel has fell on deaf ears at the last school board meeting, and that is a meeting at the schools that have been closed, with specific people that represent their task force. At Willard, it consists of myself, Mr. Albanese, who's our resident asbestos person, if you would, and 2 other members at large. With board representation that complies with the Sunshine Law, I fear that you will do the same to Willard as you have done to Northeast. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Knapp.
Hello, good evening, board. It's great to see you. Ryan Knack, taxpayer, business owner, Neil Armstrong, art educator. I actually have some fantastic news. We are actually having 3 students from Neil Armstrong Elementary showing artwork at the Pennsylvania Department of Education for Youth Art Month from the beginning of March until the end of March. The exhibition opening is this Saturday from 1 to 2 p.m. if by chance anybody's in Harrisburg, or you can see the art exhibition online at paeablog.org. It will have a link that will tell you about the YAM Art Show. The 3 students that are involved is Mason Tuff from 1st grade, Riley Bell from 4th grade, and Justin Ortiz from 3rd grade. Each of their works all have Scranton city-based themes. And I had picked out some fantastic spots, so everybody at the PA department head sees them right away. Also, this month is Youth Art Month. And I wanted to tell you guys some things about Neil Armstrong, what's going on with our creative students there. We installed and just started today, I just finally got it up because we've been so busy, the Great Wall of Art. Any student in the school is going to be able to come and post up any pictures of art that they make in class, and we're hoping to push more outside of class. These works can come in and get posted up, and then hopefully by the end of the month we'll have this huge amount of art that I invite each and every one of the administration and the board to come and view at the end of the month. It will be up until a little bit past April, and then the wall comes down, and then we will be doing a wall for Autism Awareness Month. That's pretty much what's going on at Armstrong. I would love to have everybody stop by and see how creative the students are. It's been a good year so far, and we hope to keep it going. Thank you very much for your time.
George Polomaitis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm George Polomaitis. I'm a dad. I'm a taxpayer, just like everyone else here. I guess a lot of questions were answered tonight. A lot that we were fumbling with, we were fighting for a month about, wanting to know, you know, got me out in front of the building with a megaphone asking for answers, everything. We just, you know, wanted answers, and I guess we got some, but it upset me now, because now the word that is coming to my mind is neglect for years and years, and I know it's not on you guys. I don't, you know, it's not on you, but yeah, you have to still now make it right for these future kids. I don't feel defeated, although the feeling of defeat is in the air, because we don't know if we're going to come back, we're going to get our stuff out of our lockers. That's great. I mean, it's all great, but the ultimate victor, I think, would have been to get these guys back in this school, but it's not going to happen. We saw it all up there. That's years of neglect. So it's all I'm going to ask you guys for future Panthers, for future Invaders, for future Spartans. Like, let's get the air good in these schools. I don't care about 1906, 1931, like, it's 2020 now, man, and these are some awesome kids out here. And they got brothers and sisters that are gonna be just as awesome. So I guess just make all of that right. And thank you for being patient with us, because we're just nothing but compassionate family here. Thank you.
Christine Goodekunst.
Good evening. My name is Christine Goodekunst. I am a 3-year-old preschool teacher at Whittier Elementary. I began my career in the district 26 years ago. I am here to show you evidence and facts that will prove to you how valuable our preschool program is. A program that has been in existence for 54 years, is fully funded, and has data to prove it is successful, should never be eliminated. We are a leader in early childhood education. While the rest of the country realizes the many benefits of a high-quality preschool program, like we have, you are looking to take us backwards. And why? Our district is awarded $6 million in Title I funding. $2 million is used for preschool. The rest is already being used for reading and math interventions. The money pays for 28 salaries and benefits and all supplies for a preschool. Eliminating the program would actually add 28 salaries and benefits to the district's budget, which would be fiscally irresponsible. We are mandated to use the Title I funds to improve scores. Our preschool program does just that, and overwhelmingly so. There is no other better intervention than ours. Right here I have the evidence of how incredibly successful our program is. DIBELS is a literacy skills standardized assessment that measures reading, achievement, and success. The DIBELS data was collected for the 2019-20 school year for grades kindergarten, first, and second, including our ESL and IEP students. We looked at the percentages of students who scored at or above benchmark and compared them to those who attended our Scranton School District preschool program. The results are staggering. I'm going to read one of them for you. There's data from all of our schools, and there's data for the district as a whole. So 48% of our total kindergarten students score at or above benchmark. 71% of those who attend our preschool are at or above benchmark. Then first grade students are 58% at or above, while 75% of our preschool students are at or above. For second grade, 60% are score at or above benchmark, while 74% of our second grade students score at or above benchmark who have been in our preschool. One school example is Kennedy, and I have the rest for you. 47% of total kindergarten students scored at or above benchmark, or 90% of those who attended our preschool are at or above. 51% of first grade, 83% of those who attended our preschool are at or above. And for second grade, 57% scored at or above, while 100% of those who attended our preschool are at or above benchmark. If you are to eliminate our program, you will absolutely see our scores plummet. There is no better way to spend money on raising academic success. Every dollar you spend in preschool saves between $4 and $18 down the road. We have something great here. It's time to share the good news and the good things Scranton School District has to offer. Don't we have enough bad publicity? We are a reason for people to move to the city. 2 years of free, high-quality preschool education. Please stop trying to sabotage it. Let's celebrate 55 years next year of something really great. The money is there, use it for what is right. Keep our 3- and 4-year-old preschool program. The data clearly shows it works. We can't afford to lose it. Thank you very much. I have copies for you too, for everybody. Thank you.
I am getting a note that it's hard to hear out there. Is that accurate? Can everybody hear us or no? Yes. So just as long as they're close enough to the microphone, we're okay? Okay, thank you. Courtney Novak?
Good evening. My name is Courtney Novak. I'm a parent, PTA president, and 4-year-old preschool teacher at Francis Willard Elementary. I'm here tonight to discuss suggested changes that were being discussed as part of the recovery plan in regards to preschool. When the recovery plan was presented and voted upon by the board, it suggested moving pre-K to a central location to become center-based. It says the district will look for other sources of funding and or partners. We're waiting to see what kind of funding and what partners the district has been looking for, and have they gotten any answers. We have not heard anything since then. The preschool budget of $2.2 million is only 1.4% of the entire district budget. I understand the district is considering spending the money on reading and math interventions. The rest of the Title I budget is already used on these. What are these interventions? Is there a plan, or are they just going to wing it like many decisions have been made? I have seen the district most recently spending Title I funds on various things such as Chromebooks, math computer programs, after-school tutoring, and encouraging faculty to go to conferences. Show me and the public the research and evidence that shows these reading and math interventions will work to boost the academic performance of our students more than the 2 years of education that our preschool program provides them. Eliminate preschool, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around how we got here, because the recovery plan called for pre-K to be moved to one location, is pushing our district backwards again, just like the recent closing of our libraries, cutting arts due to the ridiculous schedule at the middle schools, and lowering graduation requirements is just another reason for people to want to move. The preschool program is a reason to bring families here and get them to stay. Part of the recovery should focus on those positives in our district. It should spotlight the reasons for families to come back to our area. 2 years ago, the district shortened our pre-K sessions and eliminated the students' opportunities for phys ed, art, music, and library. You've already reduced their time in quality learning environments, and now you want to take it away from our most vulnerable children. When administration did this, they lost our ability to partnership with Head Start. Our children who were eligible would also enroll in the Head Start program, and the district was reimbursed per child per day. There was a partnership that we had and had already lost. As far as other area preschools, we have spoken with people in the Department of Education and Human Services and the Office of the Department of Child Development and Early Learning. They provided facts and figures on the number of pre-K funded slots in Scranton. There is not nearly enough availability. Where will all the children of our city go? Many of our families want to be able to afford private preschool. We fear they will stay home and lose 2 years of free, high-quality education. The data speaks for itself. Take the program away and you will see your test scores plummet. The need and cost of special education, behavioral and mental health costs will skyrocket. You have the ability to move us forward, which we're all hoping to do. If you eliminate the program, you will continue to put holes in a sinking ship. Make an educated, research, and evidence-based decision, please. Thank you.
Jean Price.
Good evening. My name is Jean Price, and I have been a preschool teacher for 20 plus years. 16 of those years have been spent with the Scranton School District. I'm currently the preschool teacher of 3- and 4-year-olds at John Adams Elementary School. Preschool is my passion, to say the least. They do the facts, I do the artsy stuff. Every night before preschool, when I get in bed, I think about the research of educating children and all that is said. The early years between ages 3 to 5 are when minds are most ready to learn, absorb, and thrive. For 54 years, our program has done just that. Just think of all the past students and the seats they have sat. I am a product of one of these seats, and all these years later, it's my face they meet. Listening to stories, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, learning to sing, head, shoulders, and knees, learning our language, finding their voice. Cutting our preschool cannot be our choice. Recognizing needs early so we can address with accommodations and support to ensure their success. The AM and PM we work without end. In 2 years the children are ready, so off to kindergarten we send. Come September the teachers are sure to be glad. With smiling faces they tell them, we know who you had. If it's numbers you need, just look at our scores. How can you justify closing our doors? I invite every one of you to please visit one of the preschool programs. It's not daycare, it's not babysitting. They're learning. My kids write and illustrated their own books for the last 16 years, and they present it to their parents at graduation. And they also read it to their parents at graduation. They're learning their letters, they're learning the letter sounds. Kids that couldn't speak a word of English are fluent, and they're having conversations with me every day. It's like it breaks my heart to think that you're going to take it out on them. And if you do cut the program, I want to know which one of you is coming to tell them that my 3-year-old class that they can't come to school next year. Because I'm not breaking that.
Good evening. My name is Adam McCormick. You can hear me, right? Teacher in the Scranton School District. I'd like to mention that I recognize that we're in the very early stages of this particular board and administration. I have supported and will continue to support members of this school board and the Scranton School District administration when you make choices that are best for our students and community. However, I also ask you to understand that our school community feels they have been misled and misunderstood by these bodies for years before members of this board were elected or administrators were appointed. And it takes time to heal those wounds, no matter how well-intentioned you may be. This leads me to the reason I'm speaking tonight. A common claim of school boards and administration in the past is it is what is best for our students, despite the fact that oftentimes there is direct evidence and support for the argument that it is in fact and not. This claim of it is best for our students seems to be the Scranton School District's version of the recently popular regurgitation of fake news. It is stated with the expectation that from that point on, no one should follow up. No one should bring up the evidence of the contrary. No one should question it. The matter is closed. Changing the credit requirements was best for the students. Cutting physical education, it's best. Cutting language elective options, best for our kids. Cutting music programs, best for our children. Cutting library, it is best for our students. And now we anticipate the claim that cutting the preschool program will be best for our students, despite the obvious evidence against this claim. Perhaps moving the 900 students of Northeast was a decision that was made because it was best for our students. But can we blame the parents for questioning this claim? Remember, the villagers and the boy who cried wolf didn't come when the real wolf came, because wolf was a claim they had heard before. I implore you as a new wave of school board members and administrators to be more transparent than past bodies and genuinely make decisions that are best for our students, because then you won't have to claim they were. The parents, teachers, and most importantly students will know by your record that you have the students' best interests at heart and support you in your efforts to do what is best for our students. Thank you.
This is a little off topic than everything else I will say. This was written by Bridget Katmeyer, who's a kindergarten teacher at Neil Armstrong. She couldn't be here, so I told her I would come and read it for her tonight. Good evening. I want to begin by apologizing for not being able to attend tonight's meeting to read this in person, but family obligations have kept me away. It's no secret that this is an extremely difficult time in the Scranton School District. As a teacher with 12 years experience, yet on the bottom of the seniority list, I feel that pressure almost every day, but the minute I walk into my classroom, I remember why I'm still here. For the past 4 years, I have watched each group of students I taught suffer from budget cuts and negativity that constantly surrounds the district. This year, I saw them suffer much more. I watched them bury 2 classmates, one former and one current Neil Armstrong students who suffered unimaginable deaths. I saw my colleagues bury those same students, children that became our own once they entered the front doors of our school and our classrooms. It was a very dark few months at Neil Armstrong, and even as we began to heal, our hearts still felt broken. Yet as broken as we were, I watched 5- and 6-year-olds rally around their friend who lost his brother to make sure he felt safe and loved. I saw our faculty and students purchase shirts to remember their friend, student, and brother. I watched a building of 630 plus students and faculty raise money not once but twice for these families in need. One thing I know to be true, when the going gets tough, Scranton shows up. After so much darkness, we knew our students needs some light to keep going. This past weekend, Neil Armstrong, we celebrated Read Across America. Since we have lost our library program, that week has basically fallen through the cracks. Our wonderful PTA has tried their best to pick up the pieces and planned some themed days to match with Dr. Seuss's favorite stories, but that love and excitement for reading just wasn't there. When I began to reach out to celebrity readers, I never imagined the response I did. And so much of that started with the Scranton School Board members. Your willingness to make time during your busy schedules to join our students to share a favorite story has made a lasting impact on each and every one of our students. So many of our parents have reached out saying their child came home right after school to tell them about their celebrity reader, the story they shared, and the questions they answered. The positivity and light I saw flowing through the halls last week at Armstrong was amazing. It was exactly what our children needed and deserved. So thank you to each of the school board members who took time to visit our school, share your favorite story, foster a love of reading in our students, and most importantly, supporting them. I cannot express in words how important that was to them. I would also like to take time to thank Scranton Mayor Paige Cognetti, Councilman Kyle Donahue, Lackawanna County Recorder of Deeds Evie Rafalco McNulty, the Scranton firefighters, especially Bob Cochran, Kyle Savage, Sarah Hophius Hall, Cap Wallace, Chris Kelly, and Gina Mazur from the Scranton Times, Ryan Leckie, Haley Bianco, Frankie in the Morning, Lissa from KRZ, and Senator John Blake, who will be joining us next week. This week has not only fostered a love of reading with our students, but it showed them how much they matter, how much they are loved, and no matter how tough things get, Scranton always shows up. Thank you for helping to make that possible. Sincerely, Bridget Katmeyer. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. And we'll certainly reach out to Bridget, but please extend our thanks to her. I think we can all agree that Read Across America Week is one of the best perks of this job. I know we've all enjoyed participating, so thank you for acknowledging that. Holly Mead?
Hi, Holly Mead. After I attended the work session last Monday, I walked out of that room defeated. I left telling a friend that I'm mad and exhausted. Last month you saw me mad, now all you're gonna see is exhausted. For the first time, last Tuesday, I walked out of my house in the morning and said to my husband, I don't want to do this anymore. He said, what? And I said, I don't want to teach school, at least not like this. It's just too much. In 20 years, I have never said that. Some people have said that closing Northeast was like having a house on fire. Not only did we lose our home, we lost all our belongings as well. Aside from grade books and novel sets and lessons plans, we lost our family. At least in most house fires, the families can get out and stay together. But our family has been torn apart. Our family, the students and staff, is what made Northeast so good. And just like any family, we've grown closer over time. We've been through good times and bad, but we've always supported each other. Now, we've been cut in half. We've been placed in temporary housing like foster children, given no deadline of when we can return to our home. You have truly broken my spirit. I have been a teacher for 20 years, a teacher in Scranton for the last 12. I was hired in the good old days when you had a list and lists of people wanting to work here, and only a select few could get into the Scranton School District. Now we're hiring literally anyone who applies for a job. This February, teachers have come to me saying that they may have to take a leave of absence because it's too much for them as well. Others are asking me for letters of reference while they apply for jobs. And sadly, some of our teachers at Northeast are leaving. Not only have we been displaced, we've also been working for 3 years without a raise. For a special ed teacher with a master's degree and 20 years teaching experience, I think I'm worth more than $56,000 a year. According to our contract, I am worth more. But right now, you, the school board, are not honoring that. Again, it's just a daily way that you break us down. So each meeting, you keep asking us to be patient, stringing us along while you come up with a plan. As adults, we really are trying, but it's the kids that are hurting even more than us. Every day, they ask us, when are we going back? And every day, I say, hopefully soon. But I'm to the point now where I feel like I'm giving my students false hope. I would hope the board would consider having a meeting with the faculty and staff of Northeast to truly see and know what's going on. I know many of you are new to the school board. You have the power to do whatever you like. If you want us back in that building, you can make it happen. You tell Dr. Finan, our superintendent, and our solicitor, they have to listen to you. If the board wants to make sure that the work is getting done in that building every day, the board can have the contractors take daily pictures of their progress and send them to you. You are paying them. For someone to put a presentation together and not have the right picture of our school, I think we should dock them $1,000. Okay? I'll wrap up. Okay, and our school is NEIS. If you want the contract settled so good teachers stay, you need to tell the administration to find a way and work it out. That's your responsibility. If you choose to say nothing or do nothing, you're slowly going to lose a lot more than just Northeast. You're going to end up losing the best educators we have. And at this point, you cannot afford to lose anything else. Please start using some of your power and your authority to make a difference. Because as teachers, we can only do so much. And this teacher is this close to giving up.
Good evening, my name is Matt Barrett. I'm a parent of Northeast student. Again, thank you for your service to the school board. A couple of things before I kind of get into the substance of my discussion here. Special meeting for NEIS seems completely appropriate. 900 kids have been displaced, so no special meeting. Public comment, I suggest to you that this board is in the minority with regards to public comment at work sessions. It's kind of ironic to have a work session calling for more communication with parents and not allow public comment. With regards to, I suggest you start your meetings on time too. That'd be great. And then also, if if parents invite you to a meeting, I suggest you not have your lawyer issue a comment undermining that meeting. And then I also suggest that you stop asking parents to submit questions if you have no intention of having those answered. There's no sense in doing that. So I have to somewhat disagree with my good friend, Holly Mead. Holly said you guys have the power, and I'm not so certain about that. The recovery plan at page 103 makes very clear the CRO shall have the final approval of the specifics of reconfiguration. So the recovery officer is the one who calls the shots on what schools will be open, closed, or will remain open. And that's something you have to keep in mind, because it's very great that you're asking these questions of the folks from Cacciardi. But really the ultimate question is, what's Dr. Feinen's plan? And the reason why that becomes very important is because Dr. Feinen, you know, in the midst of a crisis of sorts, where the school has been closed and 900 people have been displaced, Dr. Feinen, in February 2nd, is quoted, and Sarah's here tonight. Sarah really is kind of head of the game here. Scranton schools with asbestos, lead could be the first to permanently close. It's February 2nd. Northeast had closed on Thursday. And Dr. Feinen, seizing upon that opportunity, said, from our point of view, we have to look at what buildings should be shuttered based on the issue of both lead and asbestos. It might help us clarify what we need to do. Who would argue with closing a building that has all those issues? Well, I might argue with Dr. Feinen, because Dr. Feinen arrived in Scranton in February, and she undertook a review of the facility. She specifically ultimately set forth capital planning and facilities management, relying upon experts from Philadelphia. I think it was PFM, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Feinen. And they had done a review of our facilities, and they described it as being actually better than you would expect. It's kind of nice the way they said it, right? Actually better than you expect. They look somewhat clean and well kept. My understanding is, and maybe Dr. Feinen will correct me, I'm sure she will, that her recovery plan doesn't seem to address the issues of lead and asbestos. So when you read that Scranton has $143.8 million in capital improvements that need to be made, 7.3 in critical projects, and 53 to 56 high priority, I'm not so certain that's accounted for the asbestos and lead. With regards to Dr. Feinen, and I'd ask you to keep this in mind, you all met, not you, Mr. McAndrew, you weren't there yet, but on January 27th, you met in work session. And you remember what you said? You know what, Mr. Guzik was there, and you said, you know what, maybe we should do air test of all of our buildings. And Katie, I think you said, what are you looking for us to do? And you suggested, how about we put it out to bid with Mr. Guzik? Sure, I'll get you a proposal. 2 days later, 4 schools were closed. This board took no action. This board, the air tests were not done consistent with your requested proposal. You were told, you know what, no student, I think Dr. Feinen said very specifically, we can't take a chance on letting any student remain in a room that has a priority 2. 3 days later.
I'd like to ask you to wrap up, please.
Sure, Katie. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to take up your time.
I didn't hear you, Michelle, I'm sorry.
Can I give my minutes to Matt?
No, we don't transfer minutes, but thank you. Michelle?
I'll be quick, I think, I hope. Is there a plan in place to notify parents when asbestos, or I'm sorry, abatement remediation is happening during the school year? For example, at Prescott over President's Day weekend, none of the parents were notified. So is there like a process or a plan in place for parents to be notified when it's happening? So the only reason we know is because a parent drove by and took pictures of a datum truck. And now the back sterile was remediated. I'm assuming the floor tile is mastic. Is that something we can do? Can we notify parents, like, we're going to be doing remediation in the building? Because I was under the impression that Prescott was okay. I received a call on February 1st from Al O'Donnell that we're good, back to school, all clear. Air quality tests came back fine for Prescott. And then President's Day weekend, we're remediating. I have two young children, a kindergartner and a fourth grader in that building, as well as 2 at Northeast. I feel like that's maybe part of the issue with the communication and why parents are like, we don't know what's going on. I'm okay with what has to happen, I just want to know. I want to know that there's stuff happening in these schools. George is in school with my son Tyler, and it was a little disturbing to see the datum trucks there and be like, well, what are they doing? What's wrong with Prescott?
is it okay for me to send my kid back to school next week? I didn't get a call like I did when they closed on Friday the 31st. I got a call from Al on February 1st saying, we're good to go. The other thing I just want to bring up really quick, I'm just wondering about the emergency preparedness plan for the potential of coronavirus. I take medication to suppress my immune system. I have RA. I have to be very, very careful. I'm just wondering if there's a plan in place, desks being wiped down to protect our children and from them bringing it home. It kind of goes along the lines of, you know, cleaning the dust and everything like that. I just want to know if there is a plan in place for that. Can anybody?
I believe you were going to address this.
Okay.
We are working on it. We met today.
Okay.
We hope to have everything in place by Friday. We're looking at what we would have to do if we need to continue instruction while children are home, if we have to close the schools.
Okay.
So we're looking at ways to communicate to the children and send information. We're very close to getting that done. We have people working on it as we speak.
Okay, will there be something posted on the district site? Because again, I'm like super paranoid about it.
You know, there are some on our website, you'll see some postings. We're making posters as well. We're going to have the nurses and the health and physical education teachers meet with students to talk about, you know, things about hand washing, all the typical things as you can imagine. And the buses, we're going to wipe down buses. What else did you say?
I mean, I don't want to sound like Chicken Little, but it is.
There was a meeting today with the city. We had representatives there, and I think we're working on. We have a couple more pieces of the plan to put together, but we'll have it solidly in place by Friday with students and teachers all having access to what they need to have access.
Okay. And then just my question on the communication regarding further abatement within the schools. Will there be any type of plan?
I think that is something we need to discuss and make sure that we have that process put into place.
It was just a little contradictory because it was like we thought Prescott was fine and then there was abatement happening, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Julie Cohen.
Good evening. My name is Julie Cohen. I have 3 children in the Scranton School District. I'm a proud Prescott Elementary and Northeast Intermediate parent, and I have been for 10 years. I appreciate the commitment of board members and administrators in what are clearly very difficult jobs. I also believe that as parents, we have invested our most prized possessions into this district, and thus I appreciate any efforts to increase two-way parent-district dialogue and collaboration. For instance, I would think it's beneficial to establish additional task forces on other issues, such as educational program innovation, diversity and inclusion, and community collaboration. I want to thank the current administration for the work they've done in addressing the lead issue. Clearly, Mr. Doherty and others did take swift action on that. My child loves to drink from the water fountain, so I was very relieved to have his lead test come back negative. Regarding asbestos, I have reviewed many different documents that are on the website. These are from summer and fall 2019. So I am a little confused about what was missed this fall. 5 emergency items were addressed. We heard that in recent work sessions. Work was done at Northeast, including a whole building air quality test in August that came back clear. 40 square feet of duct insulation remediation was done in September 2019. So what about this duct insulation and HVAC was not known from the summer and fall 2019 testing that's been around now for about 6 months? Are you going to answer my question?
No, we're not going to address as Mr. Rowdy said,
But this is not the long past, this is the recent past. It's not a long time ago, it's just a few months ago. Like some of this work could have been done over a Christmas break, for instance. Okay? And is there any concern that there has been airborne asbestos in Northeast in the last 6 months? Do you have any legit, like very real concern that our kids have been breathing asbestos over the last 6 months? Because I have a daughter there, I'd like to know that.
I mean, we have discussed, if you would like to discuss the testing results that you touched on earlier, we can.
Clearly, I mean, certainly we can speak from our engagement.
Right, yes, and if you would speak.
But what you've seen, is there a big risk that over the last 6 months they were all breathing asbestos?
Absolutely a risk.
No, I want to know, like, did they breathe asbestos? Can we have a real sense that that was really going on?
I think Mr. DePietro can only speak to the results since he has been engaged here.
We have clear air sample results. However, again, we have friable asbestos in the air. So I think it's an incredibly risky situation to have literally an accident waiting to happen. Elbow falls off 30 feet in the air, none of us can see that, hits the ground, it becomes airborne. That's going to be distributed right now in the current system throughout the building.
So it's just an open question for me about these last 6 months, about why that, why there wasn't more attention to this whole ductwork question. If there was actual remediation done on duct insulation in September, I think it's a real question that needs to be looked at.
Again,
Yeah.
the duct remediation that was done, that I believe you're referencing, is actually that duct that is in the auditorium. I believe that's the remediation.
Okay.
It's not necessarily the old wing duct that I'm talking about, but we can see signs of repair that was done on what is essentially 2,500 square feet of duct. There may have been, I don't know, a couple hundred feet.
So should the district have done more in September? So this is, again, just a few months ago. Like, I'm confused about why that wouldn't have been seen right then when they were in there. I mean, it's not your question, it's a question. It's a live question. So you can keep considering that. And then, how is the prioritization work taking place across the district? I think that's something that we've really been confused about as parents. You're over in this school, you're over in that school. What's really an urgent emergency item? What's not an emergency item? So, like, are there any error removal priorities between 1 and 4 still outstanding in any Scranton School District building today? And particularly, and I appreciate the submission of questions and the website and all. Again, I'm all for as much communication and transparency. I'm hopeful that all these new board members, that you really want to do that, so I really applaud any new efforts on that. But I asked a specific question on Monday when I was sending my child to South the next morning about the remediation of the cafeteria where there are tiles that have asbestos at a removal priority level 2. I submitted that on Monday night and I received no answer to that. So has that been remediated? Is that level 2 sitting there? And what is the answer on that?
Julie, you submitted your question.
I submitted my question to Mrs. Orr and it was not answered. This is a week later.
You submitted it to Mrs. Orr, or you submitted it online?
I submitted it on a card at the work session on last Monday night. And meanwhile, my child has been sitting in that cafeteria for a week, and I don't have an answer as to whether those cafeteria tiles need to be remediated, have been remediated, when were they remediated, were they remediated before she was moved to South?
Are any of those questions addressed on the frequently asked questions?
Well, there's only a general answer that South is safe. There was a general answer that South was safe, but frankly, I've done a ton of reading over the last month. I think I deserve a little more in-depth answer than just the building is safe. I'd like to know about that cafeteria tile.
And we can look into that.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, thank you for your service and your work, and I appreciate additional answers on some of these questions.
I'm Will Cohen. I'm also parent of a student at Northeast. Thank you for your service on the board. Thank you also for the presentation this evening. It was helpful to hear about the ventilation system. The preceding question about the conditions at South, the example of the floor tiles, which have mastic, have asbestos in them, raises the whole question because nobody could answer that question. Nobody from Cacciardi was able to answer that question. Nobody sitting in front of us here was able to answer that question. So what does this raise? This raises a long-standing concern now of parents that different buildings are being treated differently. There's an abundance of caution exercised at Northeast, and I was following along with the ventilation presentation. It sounded like there's some reasonable concerns and issues being looked into there. However, it does not seem that until last Monday's meeting, when Matt Barrett somehow broke through the no comment barrier for a moment because he had been engaged by a school board member to ask about South. The next day, Cacciardi was dispatched to South. Very, very quickly, Cacciardi let the public know South is fine. We still don't know about these floor tiles. We're hearing a lot about the floor tiles at Northeast and how they need remediation. So what about all the period of time before Cacciardi was dispatched to South? How much of an abundance of caution was being exercised at South? This raises the whole question that parents have had for a long time, that issues of asbestos, which are district-wide, are being treated continually as crisis. There's an asbestos crisis at Northeast, and there are just asbestos issues that are, everything's fine at the other buildings, but the data and the explanations have not clearly supported this. So the question for parents has been, is there really an asbestos crisis at Northeast, or is there a public relations crisis at Northeast? And the concern is that the school board, in order to address its public relations crisis, has had to continue to perpetuate the asbestos crisis at Northeast, because there has been an unwillingness to bring down the alarm on certain issues at Northeast. For example, the dust. I did follow the argumentation on the ventilation system, but the dust, what we're hearing is, you do this kind of thing when 110 floors of asbestos-containing material, and by the way, I spoke to somebody about that, he had 20 to 50% asbestos in a lot of those beams at the World Trade Center. You're not talking about that level of asbestos at Northeast. So is Northeast 9/11? I don't think so. And it would help us to have more... Okay, thank you. I think it would help us to have more trust in how Cacciardi is being engaged by the district. If we could bring the temperature down, somehow none of us are shocked that this dust came back okay. But it took a long time, and I did speak to somebody, a facilities person in Minnesota who does this stuff all the time, who thought the ventilation stuff made a lot of sense, but he said, for them to do the dust work in the kind of situation you're describing, that sounds weird to me. And so we're concerned that there's a slow walking of this.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn.
And that we really have concerns about how urgently you want the kids back into Northeast.
Rosemary Boland.
Good evening, directors. My name is Rosemary Boland. I am the president of the Scranton Federation of Teachers. And this afternoon, I reviewed a sheet that was submitted to the Department of Ed by the Scranton School District regarding early childhood in the Scranton School District, particularly Title I services going school-wide. In order to get that to happen, an application had to be filled out and certain boxes had to be checked off. And there was a box checked off that stated that there was a committee. And teachers and administrators were on that committee, parents were on that committee, paraprofessionals were on that committee, and they voted because they thought it was the right thing to do to make our Title I go school-wide. I need the names of the people who served on that committee post haste, because I never heard of that committee and I don't know of any teacher who served on it. So I'd like to know who they are. I think somebody's playing a game, and the game was played on all of us in this room, and that includes this board and our current administrators. I do not believe for a minute that committee existed. So, as they say at the card table, let's put up or shut up. I need copies of that committee. I want to know who they are. And if there is no such committee and there's no evidence to support that, then the Scranton School District lied on an application to go school-wide. So we aren't in school-wide. Tonight on this agenda, there is a committee in your resolution packet, a special education committee. School psychologists are identified, diagnosticians are identified, and teachers are identified on that committee. When did I give you those names? Because I didn't give you any of these names. They have to come through the Scranton Federation of Teachers. Any committee that our people serve on, those names are supplied by us to the district. So this committee can't pass. We're very, very concerned, obviously, about our pre-K program. You've heard all of the correct information tonight, information that can be supported by data. I think we get cited all of the time for mistakes of the past. Well, if we make this mistake, it won't be a mistake of the past, it'll be a mistake of the present. When I hear that a program in the Scranton School District has been successful almost 55 years, and it costs $2.2 million, when you're told you're $300 million in the hole, $2.2 million doesn't mean anything. Not when it comes to saving our students, not when it comes to raising test scores. The irony around here is that when the board allowed the libraries in the Scranton School District to be closed, the very next time we met, we were told we had to raise literacy scores in the Scranton School District. For any of us who studied Latin, we know where that word literacy comes from, right? To look at a classroom teacher and say, raise literacy scores, raise your reading scores, but we're going to take away the book part, is not only illogical, there's another word for that. There's another word for that. We begged the Scranton School District not to buy the math program they bought. I personally put a call into the supervisor at the time and said, don't buy that math program. Whatever you do, don't buy that program. We didn't buy it in the 90s. Chicago got rid of it. So guess what? We bought it. And the test scores went down. And now everybody is lamenting the fact that the math scores are down. Sometimes, just sometimes, it helps to listen to what the everyday classroom teachers and classroom paraprofessionals say about academics in this district. They do that job, they work with the students, and they know best. So please, listen to them. Take their years of experience. They know what they are talking about. And for a teacher like Holly Mead to stand here tonight and say after 20 years she's thinking about leaving, I'm going to have to block her from doing that, because she is one of the most valuable resources this district has. And I'm going to stand in her way. And Kay should think teachers aren't leaving. Yes, they are. The problem isn't that they're leaving. The problem is you cannot replace them, because there's a 64% shortage of teacher certifications being issued by the colleges and universities. So you're not going to get replacements. And with the 3-year lag in contracts around here, no teacher's coming to Scranton to work for $39,000 when they can drive 10 minutes up the road and get a decent wage much higher than that $39,000. We all should be hanging our heads in shame. Closing preschool is a disgrace. If this district goes down, preschool closes, this city's going down, because nobody, not even our wonderful Chamber of Commerce, will attract any business to this town when you don't have a quality school district to go with it. So we have to shape up, or this ship is gone. And that's not a threat, that's a fact. Thank you for your time.
Eric Albanese.
He had to leave for an emergency.
Okay, I hope everything's okay, thank you. Tim Schwartz.
Hi there. It's a rough times, aren't they? I wear a bunch of different hats in my community. I'm the president of the Hill Neighborhood Association, and I know I've met a bunch of you in that capacity. I'm here today in order to support my neighbors and my neighborhood when it comes to NEIS. I feel like that building, that school, is an institution for our neighborhood, loved by my neighbors. I don't have kids there yet, but it's a place where I look forward to sending my oldest daughter in 2 years. And so I'm here to support my neighbors and to support that institution within my neighborhood, that if we don't have strong institutions in our neighborhoods, like schools, good schools, our neighborhoods will fail. Another hat that I wear is as the president of the PTA at John Adams Elementary, where my kids go. I want to mention that as the president of the PTA, I'm concerned about the amount of disruption in the lives of the students at John Adams Elementary. I came with one question. I wanted to get an update on the gymnasium and the asbestos abatement in the gymnasium at Adams. I think maybe a month ago or whenever this started, I got one piece of paper saying the gym was going to be closed. And that's all I've heard. And since then, my kids have been doing yoga in the library for gym class. And I don't know, maybe I'm just old school or whatever. It's much different than what I had when I was growing up, but I think my kids need more. I know in each one of my kids' classes, they need to have some sort of energy releasing thing for gym class. And then the other disruption that I'm very concerned about with at John Adams is the pre-K. My youngest child is 3 and he's in Miss Jean's class. You heard from her earlier. He loves school. He loves it. He loves it so much he made it to the front page of the paper on Sunday. I can't fathom the amount of disruption in his life or the lives of his classmates if the pre-K was closed when he would be next year a 4-year-old. I think this is a time for incredible courage from the board, from the community, from all of Scranton. I sure hope we bottomed out. But I would encourage you all just to be courageous in the steps that you take forward. Think about the disruption within the lives of families that can't handle too much more disruption in their lives, especially those at Adams. And is there any sort of update on the gymnasium within the school where that's an important room within the school for assemblies and gatherings and after-school stuff and all that fun stuff? Is there an update on the timeline for abating the...
Do we have any information on that, or do we need to look
Mr. Doherty, is that on the summer project?
Yes.
Is it summer thing? Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, Tim. At this time, may I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 27th, 2020?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 27th.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Ms. Cruz? Yes. Ms. Fox? Yes. Ms. Hume? Yes. Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
I apologize, I didn't ask for the question.
Can I just address the
I mean, we could, yes,
I just want to say, I am a new board member, but I'm listening to all of you, and there are a lot of questions that I have the same as you. So I guess I need to do better in trying to understand all of these issues and trying to ask the right questions to the right people to get these answers, because I'm sitting here just like all of you, questioning some things and not having answers. So that's why I'm looking at you without an answer, because I don't know. So I just want you to know that I'm going to try and do better so that I have some of those answers for you next time you come up to the podium.
do we have anything to remove from the consent agenda?
Can I add something? I'm not on the list, but can I add something?
Public comment is closed.
I have something to say. I have something to add.
If you'd like to sign up with Mrs. Orr, if there's anyone else, we can come back to that at the end of the meeting.
And I've called and I've got no answer from the school.
Okay.
Now, I'm a former student of the Northeast, which was formerly Scranton Tech 20 years ago. And I was told when this stuff was landing on desks and stuff that it was just basically dust. Now, do you have any answer for the students that were there 20 years ago?
I am sorry, I can't speak to that.
Yeah. How are you going to compensate us?
I can't speak to that again, but thank you for your comment.
You're going to compensate these kids? They're taking it home every day. And it's not just me, it's them.
Sure.
And I'm a bus driver not for the district, for a private company. And I'm spraying down my bus for, keeping it clean and stuff to them. But they're picking it up, they're taking it home to their families. They're kicking it up. They've been breathing this stuff in for as long as they've been attending this building. And I was in this building long before they were born. And probably former other students besides me breathing all this stuff in. Nobody even thought about the danger of stuff. So how do you compensate for that?
It's very difficult. Thank you very much.
I mean, probably before long of you were even on the board on the board.
Thank you very much. Do we need to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'm going to ask that you pull B2.
Anything else? I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second that. On the question?
Oh, I'm asking for that to be pulled because there's a bill in here from West Scranton Little League, and my husband's a treasurer.
Thank you. Roll call?
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Start with B2.
To the members of the Board of Directors of the School District of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Budget and Finance Committee that the following resolution be considered. The exception bill list as per the bill payment approval policy for the period ended March 2nd, 2020 be approved as per the attached. Respectfully submitted.
I'll second.
On the question?
The question. I'm looking at this. There's about $6,300 from our past solicitor. Do we know what this is specifically from? Is this request for information?
I
I believe it's related to a special ed settlement. That is correct. It's a special ed settlement.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
No.
Mrs. Welby? Mrs. Yanni?
Abstain.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
No.
6 affirmative, 1 abstention, 2 negative, motion passes.
Thank you. And for that excellent matter. B6.
To the members of the Board of Directors of the School District of the City of Scranton, the Superintendent of Schools and the Budget and Finance Committee present the following resolution for your consideration. Whereas the Scranton School District has publicly sought requests for proposal for audit services for the 2019, 2020, 2021 financial statements and the 2019, 2020, 2020, 2021, 2021, and 2022 annual financial report, PDE 2057. And whereas the Scranton School District has received 3 proposals from qualified public accounting firms licensed to practice in the state of Pennsylvania, and whereas BBD LLP has proposed the lowest 3-year overall proposal of $195,000, consisting of a fee of $65,000 per year for the services outlined above. Therefore, be it resolved, the Scranton School District Board of Directors awards the audit engagement for the 2019, 2020, 2021 financial statement and the 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022 annual financial report, PDE 2057, to BBD LLP per the attached proposal. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? On the question, I would just ask there, with the 3 firms that we received information on, there seemed to be quite a disparity in the fees. Are we comparing apples to apples in terms of services and the qualifications set forth in the RFP?
Yes, we are. We reviewed all proposals for compliance and completeness with the specification developed in the RFP. There is some disparity in the cost. The firm that's being presented to the board tonight does appear to have very large school district experience related to it. I believe they noted around 31 references of school district clients, and they have, one of the concerns of ours was, are they comparable districts of the size of the Scranton School District? They've referenced at least 4 districts that have budgets over $100 million, some of them exceeding Scranton, going as high as $224 million. So I do feel that they are qualified for the work.
Roll call?
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Ms. Gamart?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
D7.
This is a resolution calling for charter school funding reform by the Board of Directors of the Scranton School District. Whereas the average Pennsylvania school district spends millions of dollars in taxpayer money annually in mandatory payments to brick and mortar and cyber charter schools, and these payments are calculated in a manner which requires districts to send more money to charter schools than is needed to operate their programs and places a significant financial burden on districts' resources and taxpayers. And whereas the current charter school funding formula was established in 1997 under the state's charter school law and has not been changed in the 23 years since it was first created. And the formula for regular education programs is unfair because it is based on a school district's expenditures and not what it actually costs to educate a child in the charter school. And whereas the calculation for charter special education tuition is unfair because it is also based on the special education expenditures of the school district rather than the charter school. And although the General Assembly revised the special education funding formula in 2014 to more accurately target special education resources for students identified with high, medium, and low needs, This formula was applied only to school districts and not to charter schools. And whereas, because the tuition rate calculations are based on the school district's expenses, they create wide discrepancies in the amount of tuition paid by different districts for the same charter school education and result in drastic overpayments to charter schools. And these discrepancies in tuition rates for regularly educated students, for regular education, students can vary by almost $13,000 per student and by $39,000 for special education students. And whereas the latest data from the Pennsylvania Department of Education shows that in 2017-2018, total charter school tuition payments, including cyber and brick and mortar, were more than $1.8 billion, with $519 million of that total paid by districts for tuition to cyber charter schools. And whereas further analysis of PDE data shows that in 2014-2015, school districts paid charter schools more than $100 million for special education services, in excess of what charter schools reported spending on special education. And whereas the costs of charter schools for school districts continue to grow significantly each year, and on a statewide basis are the most identified source of pressure on school district budgets. And whereas the need for significant charter school funding reform is urgent, and school districts are struggling to keep up with growing charter costs and are forced to raise taxes and cut staffing, programs, and services for their own students in order to pay millions of dollars to charter schools. Now, therefore be it resolved that the Scranton School Board calls upon the General Assembly to meaningfully revise existing flawed charter school funding systems for regular and special education to ensure that school districts and taxpayers are no longer overpaying these schools or reimbursing for costs the charter schools do not incur. We, along with the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, are advocating for substantial change. Adopted the second day of March 2020. Second.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, how is this resolution going to be communicated to the legislature, if anybody knows?
I cannot speak with total accuracy, but it's from the PSBA. When we communicate to the PSBA that we have approved or not approved this resolution, they will use it as part of our advocacy day on March 23rd when we're going down to Harrisburg to harass as many legislators as we can hunt out of their offices. So it will go through the PSBA. It's a PSBA initiative, and they've asked every school district and school board in the state to endorse this resolution.
Roll call.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
And under community relations, we have a presentation from, or an explanation from Ms. Cruz, a report on the Mayor's Day event.
Good evening, everyone. On Saturday morning, I attended Mayor Cognetti's Day of Action, and it was essentially an information session about the importance of the National Census, as well as a training session for people who are interested in becoming census ambassadors. Superintendent McTiernan touched on a little bit in her report, so I'm just going to go a little bit more in depth. So the census is a national participation count which occurs every 10 years as mandated by the Constitution. The census numbers impact policy decisions and how many representatives we have in Congress, and decides how much funding is received at the state, county, and local levels. And we all know how important funding is for our district. So within the next few weeks, you should receive a packet in the mail, which you can fill out through that or by phone, and this year online. There's only 9 questions on the census, and National Census Day is on April 1st, and on that, and essentially why it's April 1st is because on that day, they want to know how many people are living in your house, including yourself, but not including, for instance, if you have a college student who is living on campus or off campus on their own, that college or university will be counting them, whichever county or state that they're in. It should also be noted that the government is not looking to figure out who are citizens, but people who are residents who are living in the United States. So if you have any families in your schools or in your neighborhood who may not be citizens and might be afraid that the government is trying to police them or trying to like ICE, let them know that it's not to seek them out, it's just to see who's living here. And so there will be other training sessions for people who are interested in being census ambassadors on Monday, March 9th at 12 noon, and as well as Wednesday, March 11th at 5:30 p.m. at Northern Light Express Bar.
It is the recommendation of the superintendent and the education committee that the following resolution is approved. Whereas due to inclement weather, the Scranton School District was closed on December 17th, 2019. And whereas the state mandates students must receive 990 instructional hours for the secondary schools and 900 hours for the elementary schools per year, and whereas the Pennsylvania Department of Education approved a 5-school day waiver during the closure for Northeast Intermediate from January 30th, 2020 through February 6th, 2020, allowing a 175-day calendar school year provided the 990 instructional hours are met. And therefore be it resolved, the Scranton School District will be open and students and staff will report on Thursday, April 9th, 2020 as a snow makeup day, and the Scranton School Board hereby approves the adjusted calendar for Northeast Intermediate. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Ms. Goodmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
D5.
It is the recommendation of the superintendent and the education committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas the Scranton School District receives federal funding through Title I and Title II, Part A of the Every Student Succeeds Act as amended, to provide financial assistance to schools with high numbers or high percentages of children from low-income families to help ensure that all children meet challenging state academic standards. And whereas for compliance with Title I and Title II Part A, the district must approve an annual equity plan highlighting the number of experienced teachers by building and the number of novice teachers in each building in correlation with the percentage of minority and low-income demographics within each building. And whereas the Scranton School District at the end of the school year reviews changes in equity within the district as faculty relocate or retire, or as classes experience shift in demographics, and the administration team works to fill staff vacancies with qualified, experienced teachers. And whereas the equity plan also addresses steps the district will take to ensure that all teachers are appropriately state certified and no building has an unfair percentage of new teachers or inexperienced teachers. And now therefore be it resolved, the Scranton School Board of Directors approves the equity plan for 2019-2020 as attached. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question? Roll call?
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Ms. Goodmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Operations Director Hume, E1. Thank you. Members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Operations Committee that the following is approved. Whereas the district has pursued work order systems to effectively and efficiently manage projects in routine and preventative maintenance throughout the district. And whereas the Assets Essentials for Education platform by Dude Solutions is a unique cloud-based software program aimed at helping schools gain visibility and control into their operational performance. And therefore be it resolved, the Scranton School Board approves the software cost of $12,555.84 for 1 year. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question?
Yeah, I think this is great and long overdue.
so we're really excited to see how it works.
When will we be able to implement this?
Mr. Doty?
Sorry?
How soon can we implement the operations system?
Once you take action, I'll contact them tomorrow.
And how do we train the district employees to use it?
There's a lot of training virtual.
Okay.
There's probably going to be a training a lot.
Oh, there.
Thank you. Roll call?
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox? Yes. Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Goodmartin?
Yes.
Mayor Furman?
E3, members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton. It is the recommendation of the Operations Committee that an environmental task force be established. Whereas the health, safety and welfare of students, faculty, staff and visitors is of utmost importance to the Scranton School District and Board of Education. And whereas the Board of Education recognises the importance of the participation of district staff and parents in promoting a safe, secure and healthy school environment. And whereas in an effort to increase communication, advisory committees can be useful in keeping the board and the administration informed with regards to specific school issues. And whereas the Scranton School Board sought candidates with a background in environmental science, engineering, construction, public safety or related fields to serve on the Environmental Task Force to learn more about the current lead and asbestos conditions in our school. And whereas 4 individuals have been selected, 1 each representing the elementary, middle and high school levels, with the 4th serving as an alternate member. And whereas this collaborative committee will also include the board president, superintendent and chief recovery officers as members ex officio, the director of operations, the operations committee chair, 2 members each representing the Scranton Federation of Teachers and the SEIU 32BJ, and representatives from the district's appointed Environmental Services Forum. And whereas committee members will be expected to be available on weekends and before or after school hours, participate in educational sessions about asbestos-containing building materials, including the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act, AHERA, as well as walkthroughs of schools and monitoring of permanent lead-related remediation efforts and assessment of annual testing reports. And now, therefore be it resolved, the following 4 parent volunteers have been selected to serve on the newly formed task force of the school district. At this point, I do not have the names here. The process for doing this. Finally, be it resolved, the Scranton School Board hereby approves the above selected individuals to serve on the Environmental Task Force according to Scranton School District's Policy 905, Community Advisory Committees as attached. The names have not as yet been provided to me.
Yes. Jenny has the names,
So-
but you, I think we need a little guidance here.
Make a friendly amendment.
Yes, because someone would like to, am I correct, someone would like to make a friendly amendment?
So
Yes.
I'll make a friendly amendment to add a 5th parent member to this board, to this advisory committee.
Okay.
You guys speak up? I use the microphone.
We're adding a 5th member. Thank you. So, you are giving us...
I'll give you the top 5.
Yes.
that we've-
Yes. I think my opinion would be the names first, but I will yield to the solicitor.
The names first
before we do
versus...
on the question.
On the question, are you going to explain where these names came from?
Yes, so is on the question appropriate before we have the names?
Yes, I think so.
Have at it.
Okay. The selection procedure for this was that the Scranton Federation of Teachers, there were 11 very excellent candidates who applied for this board. The board had no say in that. It saw the applications with the names and identifying details redacted. Cacciardi and Associates were asked to, the applications were then given an identification number, and Cacciardi and Associates recommended their top picks. Scranton Federation of Teachers recommended their top picks.
Pardon me, I just want to clarify that it was actually representatives of the United Federation of Teachers
I apologize.
and the American Federation of Teachers. I'm not sure that you even would have known that.
I'm sorry.
That the Scranton Federation of Teachers has brought to us here at no charge. So thank you for that.
So it was the American Federation of Teachers and the Dr. Kachadi and his associates who brought forward 4 names. There were 5 recommendations, and all of the names that have been selected for the committee appeared on both lists. They were ranked in order. We felt that a committee that taking 5 representatives would give us more flexibility and more expertise. I want to thank everybody who applied. It was amazing. The board has no way influenced the selection of these members. It was purely done by the American Federation of Teachers and the expertise of Kachadi and Associates. And we look forward to having those names out. Once the names have been announced, we will be contacting you tomorrow, and we will then proceed from there to work out the most effective way for the committee to work together and to see what needs to be done. What was Jenny?
So we have Kevin Werner, Richard Cobley, Stephen Knight, and Eric Albanese, did I say that right? And Paul Midori. Those are the 5. I just want to say they ranked high on both lists for AFT and Kachadi.
Jenny, would you repeat those names
Yes,
one more
please.
time?
I was just going to ask that too.
Kevin Werner, Richard Cobley.
Could you spell these?
C-O-B-L-E-Y. Stephen Knight, Eric Albanese, A-L-B-A-N-E-S-E, and Paul Madore, M-A-D-O-R-E. Okay.
Also,
gentlemen, no ladies, but gentlemen, expect a call tomorrow, or if I can't reach you tomorrow, it'll be the next day, and we will hopefully be able to arrange an inspection of the tour if that's how we decide to proceed with the building at NEIS.
We do have a second for this? I forget who it was.
I'll second.
Second, thank you. On the question?
Yeah, I just think this is great. It's going to help with communication and transparency. So I hope this is successful, and we have other committees in the future like this. It's great.
And the policy does dictate that the board appoints the chairperson and the secretary. It would be my recommendation to do that as this process unfolds, not make that decision right now, because we will still be looking to the SFT for the 2 representatives from that body. We will be looking to the SEIU 32 BJs for 2 representatives from their body, and then as dictated in this resolution, we'll fill everybody else. So, thank you to everyone who stepped forward. Roll call.
Ms. Fox? Yes. Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
No.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
8 affirmative, 1 negative, motion passes.
On E4,
Yes.
to the members of the Board of Directors of the School District of the City of Scranton, the Superintendent of Schools and the Budget and Finance Committee present the following resolution for your consideration. Whereas the Scranton School District has incurred costs related to the environmental testing and remediation of the district's building, and whereas to date the district has been invoiced a total of $82,091.54 for the testing and remediation services performed. Therefore, be it resolved that the Scranton School District Board of Directors approves the payment of the attached environmental testing and remediation costs from the district's capital project fund. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
And the question?
On the question, recently we heard of the governor's asbestos mitigation, remediation. This I think is more than emergencies and schools just like
Mr. Schuster, can you speak up?
This is a reimbursement plan, correct? Yes. So I asked if the governor's plan is a reimbursement plan for work done, and they said it's competitive, and if you're a match.
You have to match a certain amount of hours.
Thank you. And on the question, I apologize. I believe I was supposed to ask for a motion to amend the agenda to include this resolution. Is there a way to remedy that?
Ask for a motion.
Okay. May I have a motion to amend the agenda to include this resolution, please? Motion. Second. On the question. Roll call.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Now, on the question for the original motion, which has been seconded. Roll call.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Mr. Schuster, F1.
To the members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is a recommendation of the Personnel Committee that the attached list of appointments, assignments, resignations, leaves of absences, and professional contracts are approved. Appointments are effective upon receipt of proper criminal records, immigration, and medical and child abuse reports. Salaries are in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement, respectfully submitted.
Second.
Second.
On the question. Roll call.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Director Cruz, G1.
To members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the superintendent?
Yes.
It is the recommendation of the superintendent and the policy committee that the following resolution be approved. The following policies, number 222, 323, 707, 805.2, 810.1, and 904 first read have been revised by the Pennsylvania School Board Association, PSBA, and now therefore be it resolved that the Scranton School Board hereby approves as a first read revision of policy numbers 222, 323, 707, 805.2, 810.1, and 904 as recommended by the Pennsylvania School Board Association and the Scranton School District Administration. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
Second.
On the question. Roll call.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
G2.
To members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the superintendent and the policy committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas the following policies 233 and 626 attached, second read, have been revised by the Pennsylvania School Board Association, and whereas the following policies 200, 201, and 204 second read have been revised by the Scranton School District Administration, and policy number 200, 201, 204, now therefore be resolved that the Scranton School Board hereby approves as a second read revision of policy numbers 233, 626, 200, 201, and 204 as recommended by the Pennsylvania School Board Association and the Scranton School District Administration, respectfully. Respectfully submitted.
Second. On the question. Roll call.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
H2.
To members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Special Education Committee that the following resolution be approved. Be it resolved that the general operating budget of the Northeastern Educational Intermediate Unit, NEIU number 19, for the 2019-2020 school year is approved. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, Mr. Labby, our contribution this year is exactly the same as last year.
That is correct. Excuse me. Yeah, that is correct. Our contribution is $70,621.
Roll call. Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Janney?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
H3.
To members of the Board of School Directors of the City of Scranton, it is the recommendation of the Superintendent and the Special Education Committee that the following resolution be approved. Whereas the Pennsylvania Department of Education requires the school districts to develop a special education plan that is aligned with the comprehensive plan. The purpose of the special education plan is to describe the school district's commitment to ensure a quality education will be provided to each of its students with a disability eligible for special education. And whereas the Pennsylvania Department of Education requires districts to create a special education planning committee to develop the special education plan, and whereas members of the special education planning committee will include the following: Dr. Shannon Baddick, Director of Special Education, Ann Jeanette, Secondary Supervisor, Michelle Hughes, Elementary Supervisor, James Ritz, Psychologist, Dennis Engels, Monticello Program Director, Eileen Higginson, Diagnostician, Leslie Lemke, Diagnostician, Megan Duffy, Principal, Roseanne Polishan, Resident/Parent, Vincenza Glenn, Resident/Parent, Marilyn Kusner, Resident/Parent, Jody Sunday, Resident, Sarah Valdinucci, Elementary Teacher, Ann Nicastro, Intermediate Teacher, and Carlene Zico, Secondary Teacher. I apologize if I mispronounced any of your names. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Scranton School Board of Education approves of the creation and the above-mentioned members of the Special Education Planning Committee. Respectfully submitted.
Second.
On the question?
Can I just, I was just going to ask, Mr. Doherty, did you and Mrs. Boland determine that we were okay to go ahead with this?
I think this was one of the committees that she had a concern with.
Yes.
So, again, I have no problem, but this is part of this is the special ed plan that attaches to the comp plan. So, stakeholders, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ann and Paul, stakeholders that we are using for the comp plan were picked by you.
The comp plan outlines certain community members and stakeholders.
Correct.
That need to be a part of it, business managers, principals, teachers. So there's, for the district comp plan, there's a list of people that the comp plan expects to be populated.
Right, so again, Dr. Baddick may have been under the understanding, because for the comp plan, we chose the members according to the stakeholders that we needed. So this is the part, the special ed part of the comp plan. So she assigned these people determined by what she needed. If we need to keep the people on here and she would like to change names of different teachers, then we can work around that. But we need to get this approved by the board, so I don't know how you want to handle that.
On the question, I had a couple of questions. So when we do these committees, the teachers are paid to hold.
Correct. In curriculum committees and all, yes, that is correct.
So going through these, I mean, Dr. Baddick is salary, correct?
Correct.
Can you let me know which people would be hourly on here? I guess that's the easiest way to do it.
Psychologists would be,
The hourly.
diagnosticians. Obviously, we don't pay the residents. Elementary teacher, intermediate teacher, secondary.
How often do they meet?
Depends on, it depends on what part she's working on and what she needs her.
Is this to replace the last special education plan?
Yes, this is the last, well, again, I don't know what plan you're talking about, but this is the comp plan, which is, as everybody knows, I outlined in my transition plan, November of that says that she has to have 3 teachers, but anybody that's in the union would need to be paid. Anybody that's a central level staff would not.
This is the result of the special ed audit.
No, it's totally separate. This is mandated that we complete this.
So if we were to approve this tonight, and after consultation with Rosenbaum and others, it was necessary to maintain an elementary teacher on there but change the name of the teacher, it would not void our approval. So if we approve this, that keeps the paperwork rolling, and then the actual people on the committee can be swapped in and out.
If that's okay, is how it's written. If they take the names out and just leave an elementary teacher, an intermediate teacher, a secondary teacher, and then...
That would make more sense to
remove
redact the name right now, so you just keep the position.
Okay.
You would have to redact just about every name on this sheet because we recognize all of, pretty much everybody on here as members of our union. All the psychologists are ours, the diagnosticians are ours, the special education teachers, which are none. And then we have the elementary, intermediate, and high school. I don't know why this got to you tonight without me seeing it. That's not my problem. My problem is if you pass this the way it's written, I'm going to read it tomorrow morning.
Redact all the bargaining unit names.
Okay. So they would be...
So we are
That would be the
redacting
psychologist.
psychologist.
That would be the diagnosticians. That would be the elementary, intermediate, and secondary teacher.
We need an amendment to adapt it, or would we need to move a motion to amend it, or would we just take the names out?
We could just take the names out.
This Sunday, is she a resident or is she working in the special ed office?
It's the secretary of the special ed office.
Is that appropriate?
We're going to change that then.
I mean, I think if none of the other residents are employees of the district, I might change that to keep it consistent.
Jody Stinley's name is redacted then?
Yes.
So at this point in time, the administration would like us to move forward with this, or should we table it until we get it situated with the best of the
I want you to do what you're comfortable with. I would like to continue to move forward with this, but if you're not comfortable with this, then table it, and we'll do it in April. That's up to the board, how they wish to proceed.
So would you prefer to come back with names populated here, or would you prefer to move forward?
May I ask how these people were selected for this?
Unfortunately, Dr. Baddock's not here today, so I don't want to, I know that she worked on this because this is her special ed plan, and she, so these are the names that were given. So my recommendation at this point, since there's a lot of questions, is to table it and then bring it back in April. I mean, that's the way that it looks like we're going here, so that's probably what I would recommend at this point.
I'll second that.
Roll call?
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yep.
Yes. Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmore?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
New business. Vendor relations.
So,
Need
I
a
guess,
discussion on how we're going to proceed?
sorry.
Nope, go ahead. What,
Is this the right time to ask new business?
this is it?
Okay, so can we, how do we go about setting up a meeting? And I'm sorry if I'm showing my ignorance here, because I know everything has to be advertised. But if we wanted to meet as a board to discuss questions that come up, like say tonight, how do we go about doing that?
We can do that through committee. You can just say, I want to have an operations committee meeting, and we can advertise that.
Okay.
You know, the chair of each committee.
Okay.
You can also, we can call a special meeting at any time.
Okay.
You can request that.
So going back to the questions about all the index cards that were submitted, if I want to find out what happened with those, because I know there's generalized statements on the website, because I'm checking them like the parents are, how do I find out why they weren't all listed individually and answered individually?
I mean, I think that's something we can just address tonight.
Yeah.
I have the cards, I actually have them with me.
Okay.
To return to Ginny. The morning after the last meeting, I know I'm not speaking into the microphone, but I will just hand you these so I don't forget. The morning after the meeting, I typed all of these and sent them. I would have to confirm to whom. I believe I sent them to Kachardi. I believe I copied Ginny. I can confirm that for you. I believe there was also a second set of questions submitted from a parent directly to Mrs. Orr. I think I was copied on that. I can look back in my records. And then Kachardi used these to formulate the frequently asked questions sheet that is being updated on a pretty regular basis. I am sure if there's anything in particular on this list that you'd like to see addressed, I would imagine you'd be happy to do that, add that to it. I think in the interest of brevity or consistency, efficiency, whatever you want to call it, you all probably tried to compile these into questions that were more overarching rather than, I mean, some of them were very, very specific. So I think you tried to present information that would apply to everyone rather than to a specific matter, but we can certainly revisit that.
That answers the question, and I wasn't sure, I didn't actually see the questions, so.
I do think one of the questions I have, I don't think this, I know this, one of the questions that I have is how we are getting the questions. I know they go into a spreadsheet, and this may be a question for Rob Noon, perhaps, from the online, is he over there? Hi, Rob. Maybe this is a question for you, I don't know, but the questions that are being submitted online, I know you said they populate a spreadsheet, and then where are they going? I think we have to make sure that that piece of the process is...
We report them to you daily, weekly, whatever.
I'm sorry, say that again?
We get them to you daily, weekly,
okay.
However you want to do it.
Okay, so we can set a system up for that. You know, maybe if they go through Mr. Doherty, I could be copied on it. Rose, operations chair, could be copied on it, and we can get them to Kachardi to answer. That would be helpful. So we'll make sure that's in place.
All these questions from the cards go to Mr. Kachardi, and they will
yes.
answer in the frequently asked questions.
Yes. My phone's not dead. I can find out exactly when I did that. I'm sure it did.
Oh, I remember the questions. There were 29 of them, and they were...
I think that's maybe what, I'm not sure, but I think maybe that's what people were looking for is, all individual questions rather than, a generalized statement covering them.
But again, some of those questions were specific to items that are under litigation that Mr. Ordy said we were to wait to answer. There has to be a little bit of triage on those questions because if they relate to matters that are under litigation and we have a federal lawsuit going and we have, I'm sure, several lists of questions that read like depositions waiting for us as well. I think we need to triage those questions and answer what we can without damage to the board and the district.
I think that speaks to some of the issues we've had with communication as well.
Sure. Absolutely, but equally there are questions that can be asked, but that Mr. Ordy has recommended that we don't discuss at the moment. So possibly we can put up an answer that says, on the advice of council, this question will be answered at a later date. Maybe what we need to do to ensure that we receive the question, so people don't feel they're being ignored, but they do, and they are getting a response that is the polite response that we have heard you and do it, but unfortunately at this moment we are not in a position to answer that question. So maybe that's what we'll do. We'll look at that system. I'm very happy to look at any of those questions tomorrow night with Mr. Ordy's input, see what we can answer and what we can't. Is that a reasonable, John?
Yes, it is.
So, our biggest piece of new business is to discuss moving forward with the HVAC system and what we need to do to get the HVAC system in a situation on whichever, whether we work forward on one of the HVAC systems, two of the HVAC systems, three of the HVAC systems, I don't think so. But what we need to do to ensure that we can get the kids back into the school, and clearly at the moment the next decision we have to make as a board is what do we do about, we will have to move a motion to approve the funds, I assume from the capital fund, to do that. But before we do that, we need to be sure, for instance, were we to move forward tonight with a resolution to approve the $40,000 estimate, $40,000 to $50,000 for the HVAC remediation and abatement on the 1931 system, and we were then to find out that without remediating all three systems we couldn't reopen the business, this would be difficult. And I think it's a very difficult decision to make tonight without being in position, without having any guidance whatsoever from the zoning people. I mean, there must be 150 regulatory bodies with something to say about this. Dr. Finan, do you have a short list or a long list or a...
Anytime you renovate a building, you have to get approval, and I think because we've already gotten a waiver and we've moved out, we're going to have to go through PD, so I'm not sure what those steps are. But I know, for example, if we only use a portion of the building, we'll have to make sure that we have enough entrance and egress doors for emergencies, and that's by population, I believe. And so I'm sure we have to be inspected by our local fire department, as well as, I don't know if you have a labor and industry here, what your department is in the city, but somebody will have to, yes.
And are there any concerns about that at the moment?
Well, I'm not sure about the doors. I don't know, because I don't know if we only use a portion, how many doors we have. Because as you know, the portico is not operational. That's only for emergencies now, because we didn't fix that. So we have some limitations that we have to look at.
So on the question, I think the question for me that I'm thinking at the moment is, do we have enough information to move forward tonight to approve the expenditure of the first segment on the 1931 building, or do we call a special meeting later this week when we have slightly more information?
I think if you don't move on at least that 1931 section, if we want to get children back there, we need to move sooner rather than later on that. And I think the points that I'm making about the doorways, I don't know if we can solve that now or not, because I don't know who does your inspections here. I mean, I know who would do them in my, yeah, I think, but that shouldn't hold you back from this decision, I know.
So if we approved, I think at the moment, I think it would be, I think I would feel more comfortable with more information about moving forward with the auditorium.
I just have a quick question.
Ladies and gentlemen.
In regards to like this 1931 section, so no matter what, if we want students back in school, eventually, these are rules to get the students back, no matter what this system does have to, the work has to start. So whether we're in the regulation of all of that or not, our goal is to get them back in there. So whether there's enough entrance and exits and such, that work is going to be certain no matter what, so the sooner the better, like you said. If we come to find out that we don't meet the regulations, we know we have to continue to move forward on work, correct? So no matter what, if we start the work, we're starting the process that no matter what we're going to be doing. So although yes, more information is definitely needed and warranted, but no matter what, if we're going to be doing that work, the sooner we approve it, the better, because if it comes to find out that we don't meet the regulations, that's even longer waiting to start the next system.
Yeah.
I was on that.
I agree. I think we need to get the ball rolling with it, start it, and then we get those other approvals. And if they come, they come. If not, we'll figure out something. But I think we have to get the ball rolling and start making some fixes.
I was about to say that it seemed to me that if we were to defer the work on the auditorium for later discussion, and we were to defer for later discussion, any work on 1906, I was about to move a motion that we bite the bullet tonight and resolve to move ahead with the remediation of the system. I'm sorry that I didn't get to finish my motion. I would have possibly, had I been a lawyer, started with that and put the qualifiers at the end. So I would move a motion that whereas we need to do that, I can try to, do you want to run quickly, Jimmy, or do we just wing it? I would move a motion that at the recommendation of the superintendent and the operations committee, that the board resolve to expend up to $50,000. Up to $50,000 for capital funds to, let me just find the exact wording here.
While she's doing that, Pat, can you explain where that money's going to come from out of the capital funds? And how, I think we touched on that it's...
Yes, the capital funds, it's separate from your general fund budget, but throughout the government-wide financial statements of the district, the capital project fund does retain a fund balance. As of 12/31/19, I think it was approximately $5.5 million. Now that's unaudited. Obviously, we've expended some dollars tonight, but we exceed $5 million available through the capital project funds.
With that, the governor's initiative, if you want to call it initiative for emergency funds for asbestos and things like this, are there any steps that we have to go through to procure these funds?
Yes.
If we move ahead with this today, are we skipping any of those steps, or we're including ourselves in any of that money? I don't know if we really have any information about this.
His budget won't come out until sometime in June, so.
It's a pretty involved process, just so you know. I mean, we will go through that process, but...
So, you know, we can't hear anything.
I do think we are trying to speak into the microphones. I do know there are speakers all around, but I mean, you are welcome.
What's the timeline on getting approval from PDE, the fire department, or codes?
Yeah, like how soon can we get with that?
Start tomorrow.
So, does anyone want the motion? Are we ready for the motion, or is anyone?
No, you can complete your motion,
John,
please.
With great appreciation to the quick writing, Mr. Audio. It is the recommendation of the superintendent and the operations committee that the board approve the expenditure
For the abatement.
as recommended. We're to expend up to $50,000 of capital funds for abatement of the 1931 HVAC system at NEIS. Is there...
I second.
On the question.
How much have we spent on remediation? How much have we spent on remediation at Northeast at this point in time?
Specifically on Northeast,
yes.
We have a quote that we are working on completing, as Dr. Kachardi stated, I think by March 9th, which was the hit list items, which was roughly $40,979. That's all we've received to date. We've not received anything related to consultant fees or testing at this time. And obviously, Kachardi has presented you with three estimated costs related to the various fan systems.
And what was that last date of, like the last invoice date?
Which invoice?
The last payment that we've had, or the last invoice that we received on this product?
Was from Datum Products from February 23rd.
So between February 23rd and now.
So I'm sorry, so if it goes over 50,000, is that something that we then have to approve after, or is it?
Yeah.
Question. And Dr. Kachardi, since you're still here, so just to reiterate then, we spend this $50,000 and you're saying that we should be able to get the children back in there within a few weeks? What do you think we're looking at?
My estimate would be about 30 days based upon all of the approvals coming in the reasonable amount of time. The building occupancy permit, fire department making the HOA, EPA because it's non-traditional projects, and Department of Education.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Roll call?
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Ms. Fox? Yes. Ms. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Mrs. Welby?
Yes.
Mrs. Yanni?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmartin?
Yes.
9 affirmative.
Thank you. Is there any other new business at this time?
So then how do we move forward with the rest, I'm sorry, of, like the other section and system and such, do we wait and then just, it seems like that would take 3 months anyway, so that would be a future.
Right, yeah, and
recurrence, so.
right, the 1906 work is not something we could do and get the students back in before the end of the school year, so it would certainly be reasonable to explore that, understand it, and, you know, take that up as summer work if that is a step we want to take. I think our next question will be the auditorium. And, you know, at this time, the action we've taken here keeps the auditorium closed. Everybody, so that's where we are for now. If we want to see how this process goes, revisit that, we can do it next month. We can do it at a special meeting if other information comes to light between now and then. I think taking this one step at a time, given our financial situation, is a wise move, and yet I think it demonstrates that we do want to get these students back to their school.
Right, so just to clarify, phase 1 will be, Mr. Doherty's already working on a plan for getting the children's belongings out of their locker. They'll be bagged, and then we're figuring out a plan now of how we will get that to the students, whether we bring it to a certain area or they come and get it, we will figure that out. And then phase 1 will include what you just voted on.
Do you feel as though the plan to get the students' belongings back is something you can have by the end of the week, the beginning of next week? I mean, I know there are a lot of logistics in that, so I can understand you'd hesitate to put a fine point on it, but.
So we're gonna get together how many people that we can actually get over there and get, I think I'll have a better idea if we're able to start tomorrow morning, how long, how many lockers are going to take us. I'm hoping that there's an Excel sheet with every student by number. We'll need a master key, so we need to work on all those logistics. We need
but
bags.
when you understand the logistics after meeting tomorrow, we can probably get a timeline in place.
Yeah, I think if we're able to get on it in the morning and see how many lockers we can get through tomorrow, and then I'll have a better idea when everybody would get their belongings back.
How can you communicate that, Missy, to the parents? Call?
Yeah, I can have Mr. I can have Mr. Haney send a one call.
Okay.
To the school community, just saying, you know, we're working on this. This is how many lockers we got through today.
Great. Good.
Can I make 2 suggestions?
Sure.
1, we start with 8th grade, and 2, there's amnesty. If there's stuff in there that's completely private, that when we pack the kids' possessions up, there's an amnesty.
Sure. We'll do our best. Yes.
Thank you.
We'll do our best.
I mean, excluding
I mean, the milk and the food, that'll be
Mr. Abbey?
Oh, yeah. You may be the only people in Scranton with a legitimate use for a face mask.
There may be some amnesty for certain things, but there may be things we might have to report.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm just looking at it generally with memories of what I had in my locker.
You know,
while I was there.
heavens, if we should find the makings of a bomb in a locker, we have to report it.
Well, okay.
I know what you're thinking about.
So one last question then. When we get the kids back in, can we get all 900 students back in then? If this all works out?
We don't know that answer.
We don't know.
No.
Okay.
No. I wouldn't even get that.
Okay, we don't know yet. Okay.
I must say, Dr. Kachani, looking at those photos of the tunnels and the things, whether there was asbestos in that dirt or not, I'm glad it's not something we'd want anyone to breathe in. It's sad. It's really sad.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pichardi, for staying with us for the long haul this evening. I think you and Rocco were able to answer a lot of questions for us this evening. And thank you to Missy and Pat and Paul and Ann and everybody who's worked hard to get things together here and help us move forward. And to Dr. Finan and Mr. Rowdy for your leadership, your expertise, your patience.
I would just like to, I know this has been a tough situation for all the parents, and I'd just like to say thank you for, you know, I understand this has been tough, and there's nothing that I can do other than to say thank you for your support, and I just want to we want to get the kids back to where they need to be, which is at Northeast. You know, we're going to move as fast as we can. Many of you I see sitting back there, I grew up with many of you. So thank you, and I promise you that I just want to take care of your kids, and I truly mean that.
Thank you. Understanding your concern for the students, what would stop the parents from coming into the school to gather the students' belongings?
We have abatement work going on. That was the answer that I received.
Did you guys have abatement work when you toured on the weekend?
At that time, there was nobody working.
So we couldn't come into on a weekend when nobody was working there in the school?
That's not even something we discussed, sir.
No.
I think, honestly, I think at this time we have a plan. We're going to move forward starting tomorrow and work as fast as we can to get the belongings back.
Yes.
All of those things have been and will be considered. I do think this is going to be a very careful process, and not that I think anyone wouldn't be capable of working hard to help that, but I think minimizing confusion in this process is incredibly important. So there were some ideas kind of floating around the table today, so I do think the cataloging and the numbering and, you know, the strategic nature of all of this is absolutely going to be taken into account. Anyone have anything else for the good of the order? Okay. Motion to adjourn. May I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.